Chapter 1179. On the day that's the Ant Queen 2 finished filming, not only were the crew celebrating, but there was also one other person that was extremely excited. This person was Elder Nangong. He was one step closer to fulfilling his plan. Parasite was supposed to be released a long time ago, but Elder Nangong had been suppressing it for a long time. So, all of their previous promotions went to waste because Spring Fall failed to capitalize on the popularity of the film. Now, the post-production company managed to snatch the opportunity away from them. The popularity of the Ant Queen made everyone in the industry aware of the empty market for sci-fi films. Everyone wanted to enter this empty market and get a piece of the pie. So, in the next 2 to 3 years, sci-fi films were going to rise again. Springfall's staff were unhappy with Elder Nangong. After all, they had invested so much effort into the film and even poached Tongning's post-production team with Hua Dali. But now, no matter how good the production was, it was useless. Every 2 to 3 days, the staff gathered together to complain and express their anger. Among them, the person that listened the most was Bai Jun. As the director of Parasite, although he wasn't as angry as everyone else, he still felt it was a pity. After all, Parasites was supposed to be the best film to compete with the Ant Queen. Yet, it was now being used by Elder Nangong as a tool for revenge. As for Bai Jun, he had started out as an art film director and was about to make a name for himself. But why didn't he have a way out? Was he still going to slit his wrist and commit suicide? Thinking about his old self, Bai Jun was amused. But, for some reason, he felt that living was more interesting. At least, he had agreed to film this film and paid off all his debts. He was now debt-free. Afterwards, he packed his things and went to look for someone. Tongning was surprised that Bai Jun had returned to her side. Back then, she had tried so hard to invite him, but he had refused. So, she even asked Xiao Man to help her. "What? You don't welcome me?" "I'm just surprised." Tongning naturally welcomed him back. "I thought you didn't care about my team." "No one in Beijing would dare to look down on your team," Bai Jun laughed. "I don't need a lot of money. As long as you can feed me and keep me warm, I'll be satisfied. If you're not here for fame and fortune, why did you come?" Tongning felt that Bai Jun was a strange person. Unexpectedly, Bai Jun shrugged his shoulders and replied, "Who knows? Perhaps it's the warmth of your team that makes people want to continue living." Tongning didn't understand how much Bai Jun needed to survive, but she agreed to let him stay and temporarily act as Xiao Man's assistant. Bai Jun didn't put on airs just because he was a veteran, and Xiao Man didn't express her dissatisfaction with Bai Jun just because he used to be on the enemy's side. Xiao Man knew very well that there were no boundaries in artistic communication. Besides, she knew very well that Bai Jun was a very talented man. After filming for The Ant Queen ended, post-production also sped up. As a non-professional production team, the youngsters from Starshine were obsessed with their new field of expertise. In fact, they were so obsessed with it that it was impossible to imagine. Soon, the first trailer for The Ant Queen 2 was released. Hai Rui did not hold back as they teamed up with all the major theaters in the country to release a 30-second commercial for The Ant Queen 2. Film fans did not get to see the legendary Parasite. Instead, they got to see the trailer for The Ant Queen 2. This time, as the antagonist, Enchanting revealed a ruthless side in the trailer. But it was especially thrilling. Not only was the feeling of a giant termite scary enough, but there was also the addition of a powerful antagonist like Enchanting. Just like that, the battle between the good and the antagonist, the battle between the good and the monster, and the antagonist and the monster, all 3 storylines played out side by side. It was extremely exciting. In just 30 seconds, film fans were already screaming that it was so exciting that their hearts couldn't take it. Fans even started leaving comments on Hai Rui's official Weibo. "I'm really looking forward to it. The Ant Queen 2 foot is obviously more exciting than the first and has a better story. I really like the way Tongning and her team created The Ant Queen. It doesn't focus on love. I hate watching exciting films like this, especially when they include a hero saving the damsel in distress. I need to cheer for Tongning and President Mo. Especially President Mo. He was so handsome that it was a complete mess. I can't believe he's playing the antagonist this time. He's so handsome. All of a sudden, Beijing was filled with a sci-fi craze. Perhaps, the only people that could create such a scene were the Tongning couple. Meanwhile, Superstar Media, led by Lin Qian, also released some good news. Qin Shui, the old singer that Lin Qian had personally rescued, had returned to the stage in Vienna after a fierce battle with her old employer. At her lowest, Qin Shui relied on scavenging to make a living. This was one of the biggest highlights of the entertainment industry. This old woman that had lived for half a century was actually able to return to the music industry after so many years. In fact, she even returned to the place that she always dreamed of. Rumors began to spread within the industry that Lin Qian had received Tongning's teachings and was now able to support Superstar Media. Afterwards, plenty of artists that wanted to make a comeback approached Lin Qian. Superstar Media seemed to have returned to the days when Tongning was still around. Lin Qian's desk was filled with offers from artists. So, at Hai Rui's New Year celebration dinner, Tongning suggested to Ting, I hope you can assign a few more professional people to help Lin Qian. At least, she won't have to worry when she's scouting for artists. Lin Qian has already notified me, but Hai Rui has no intention of getting involved with Superstar Media's management. Lin Qian has her own plans. I never thought that she'd be faster than me, Tongning laughed as she helped her children arrange their clothes. After hearing this, Ting pulled Tongning over and placed her on his lap. The Ant Queen 2 will be released early next year. Why are you in such a rush? Have you forgotten? Elder Nangong has already seen our script. No matter what he plans to do, it's best if we release it earlier. How about this? If we want to catch Elder Nangong off guard, we can pick a festival and release it without any promotions. Are you that confident? Ting asked as he hugged Tongning. You should know that if we don't do any promotions, the film will fail. I have confidence in the film and I have confidence in the fans. Most importantly, I have confidence in the market. If a film isn't good, no amount of promotions will matter. But, for a good film, word of mouth is the best form of promotion. Chapter 1180. After hearing this, Ting pinched Tongning's nose. You sure have a lot of guts. There's nothing I don't dare to think about. Because that's what I want you to do. Elder Nangong did indeed read a portion of the script and left. But, who knows if he has any evil intentions towards it. Lu Che has also found out that Elder Nangong has been in contact with companies in the US. This is the only way for us to ensure the safety of the script. Previously, the script Forge Stupid had been leaked. At that time, they decided to publish a book to ensure that Stupid didn't have any copyright issues. But this time, the situation was different. So, publishing a book wasn't the best option. What do you think? President do you dare to make a bet with me? Ting smiled as he looked at Tongning. If this was in the past, Tongning's suggestion would have been a fantasy and would have been impossible to pass. But now, Hai Rui's board of directors were extremely lenient towards Tongning because of her capabilities. In fact, the shareholders doted on Tongning more than her husband did. As long as it was Tongning's suggestion, the higher-ups would consider it seriously. In fact, some shareholders even told Ting not to be too harsh on her. Since that's the case, let's get the agency to come up with a feasible plan tomorrow. We need to ensure that after the film is released, we can use the following promotions. Tongning nodded her head as a smile appeared on her face. She really enjoyed President Mo's trust. The next day, Ting brought up Tongning's suggestion in a meeting. The reason was that the script had been leaked. In order to prevent Elder Nangong from falling into a trap, Tongning decided to play her cards differently. But, of course, this was a huge risk. Even though everyone had a lot of confidence in the quality of the film, releasing it without any promotions was unheard of. Of course, those films that didn't have the means to release it were excluded. After all, The Ant Queen was going to be one of Hai Rui's most important projects next year. So, everyone was under a lot of pressure. But Ting asked Lu Che to show the higher-ups some data. The data from the past 2 years shows that all of Tongning's works have the highest number of views. It's not only The Ant Queen one, even the earliest work, stupid, has a shocking amount of views on all the major websites. It's constantly on the top searches. What does this mean? Everyone has already gotten used to treating Tangning's works as classics. In other words, they have acknowledged the quality of her work. So, even though Tangning hasn't released a new work, they continue to flip through her old works. What is this? This is publicity. This is more useful than any publicity. I've already decided that The Ant Queen 2 will be released on the same day as The Ant Queen 1. Rue will hold a commemorative event to commemorate The Ant Queen and give the audience a big present by releasing The Ant Queen 2 in the early hours of the morning. That way, the new and the old will stick together and it will be a great promotion. What do you think? When it came to works, they didn't have as much say as Tangning. When it came to publicity and PR, they had no say in front of Mo Ting. Since President Mo has already made up his mind, then let's do it this way. If we want the film to be popular, we need to change the way we promote it. That way, the industry will be more active, someone agreed. We don't have any objections either. The higher-ups also agreed. Besides, I think this is quite interesting. It's the same as the Ant Queen 1 becoming popular again. The audience will be pleasantly surprised and the major broadcasting sites will benefit from it. Everyone will be a winner. Since that's the case, then let's do it this way. When the time comes, we will definitely catch our peers off guard. Rue's staff were also looking forward to this publicity method. Plus, without the usual publicity, The Ant Queen 2 would be a huge challenge to everyone's abilities. If the film's quality was too bad, there was no way they could survive. But everyone still trusted in Mo Ting. After all, as the decision-maker, he had never made a wrong decision. Elder Nangong never expected Tangning and Mo Ting to do something like this. He simply thought the couple would follow the usual routine. He paid close attention to Rue's every move because he wanted the Americans to be one step ahead of Rue, but not by too much. Not only did they want to ride on the popularity of the Ant Queen, but they also wanted the Ant Queen 2 to be sued by Hollywood. So he waited. He waited for Mo Ting to make an official announcement. He waited for Mo Ting to confirm the release date. But there was no point in waiting. After all, Rue had no intention of announcing the release date. They sure can keep their composure. Why couldn't they keep their composure? That in itself was a very strange question. The Ant Queen 1 foot was scheduled to be released on December 16th. So, The Ant Queen 2 was scheduled to be released on its second anniversary. Meanwhile, a rumor started to spread within the industry. Rumor had it that Han Yufan had returned to the entertainment industry after a few years and was planning to rebuild Tianyi Entertainment. If this wasn't related to Tangning, Han Yufan wouldn't have attracted so much attention. But, regardless, Tianyi Entertainment was a long time ago for Tangning. It was so long ago that she couldn't even remember the details anymore. After all, the difference between her and Han Yufan's status was like heaven and earth. Rue could destroy a small agency at any time. But Mo Ting didn't see Han Yufan as an enemy. Because on the night that she received the news, Tangning said one thing to him. President Mo, you don't need to worry about it. In my heart, Han Yufan doesn't even have the right to be mentioned in the same breath as you. Mo Ting was extremely pleased with Tangning's words. Over at the Nangong family home, after Nangong Quan was discharged from the hospital, he began to work elsewhere. Since he said he was going to hand over Parasite, he wasn't going to go back on his word. So he shifted his focus and tried his best to recover everyone's losses. Of course, his relationship with Elder Nangong was not going to change for the better. After all, Elder Nangong was a relative that had once tried to poison him. No matter how magnanimous he was, he would still be traumatized. After experiencing a life and death situation, the way Nangong Quan protected his wife and daughter changed a lot. At least, when it came to Elder Nangong, he no longer blindly backed down. However, even though they knew what Elder Nangong was planning to do to the Mo family, they couldn't tell him. This made Su Yuran and Nangong Quan feel extremely guilty towards Tangning and Nangong Quan. The Mo family were the ones that saved Nangong Quan, plus, being in the entertainment industry, Nangong Quan was bound to see Mo Ting at all sorts of events. But at times like these, the two of them simply brushed past each other. Chapter 1181. Old Master Nangong, who had always been stubborn, didn't feel good about this matter. However, everything he had done had indeed been done for the sake of revenge. Now, whenever little Eggshell saw the old man, she would hide in her room in fear. Perhaps it was because the incident last time left a huge shadow in little Eggshell's heart. Plus, she more or less understood why her father almost died, so whenever she saw the old man, she would hide as much as she could. Elder Nangong assumed that he would be lonely for the rest of his life, so he did not make too many requests of little Eggshell and Su Yuran. After all, he simply wanted to give them an explanation for what happened in the past. He never expected to have children and grandchildren around him. He staked everything on one throw just to get an explanation for the 20 years he spent in prison. Was he hateful? There was no doubt about it. So, was he pitiful? When she thought about it, he was indeed pitiful. Su Yuran often felt bad for him, but she couldn't get close to him to care about him. She was afraid that if she got close to him, she would simply be used. That night, after Su Yuran had a shower, she entered the study room to find Nangong Quan looking through photos of his parents. If it wasn't for these photos, he would have forgotten what his parents looked like a long time ago. Will grandfather really be happy after he gets his revenge? Even if he succeeds and injures the Mo family, will he really be happy? He no longer cares about whether he'll be happy or not. He only lives for one reason, to make the Mo family suffer. He can't stop, otherwise, he'll lose the motivation to continue living, Nangong Quan replied as he wrapped his arm around Su Yuran. Su Yuran's heart ached for Nangong Quan. Even though Elder Nangong almost caused him to be paralyzed, he did not hate anyone. In fact, he even gave Elder Nangong a chance to get his revenge. This man looked tall and dangerous, but his heart was truly kind. Can you tell me all the pain in your heart? Seeing you like this makes my heart ache. Nangong Quan rubbed the back of Su Yuran's waist and smiled. Shouldn't all men be this magnanimous? No, of course not. At least, Mo Ting wouldn't have suffered like this. Tongning wouldn't have let him suffer like this. They were all people who treated him very well. That's enough. Everyone has their own beliefs in life. Let's take your favorite Tongning as an example. She firmly sticks to her beliefs. If people don't offend her, she won't offend them. My belief is not to blame anyone and always maintain a kind heart. After hearing Nangong Quan's words, Su Yuran suddenly laughed. You're wrong. The person I like the most isn't Tongning, it's you. Also, if anyone bullies you in the future, I can help you beat them up. Don't forget, I'm a retired soldier. Silly. Nangong Quan lowered his head and kissed Su Yuran. The couple then fell asleep in each other's arms. Because of Nangong Quan's generosity, Tongning had always approved of him. This was also the reason why she was willing to help Nangong Quan and Su Yuran. However, the relationship between the two families was really strange. At first, there was only hatred, but now, there was the grace of saving his life. Little Eggshell's ill-fated relationship with the two brothers didn't even count. Of course, Elder Nangong continued to be lonely. Especially when he was waiting for Hai Rue's announcement for The Ant Queen 2 to be released. He spent most of his time shuttling back and forth between the US and Beijing. Even though, in the end, he didn't get what he wanted. Over a year had passed, but Hai Rue still hadn't released The Ant Queen 2 and there was no news of it. Tongning focused on the post-production of The Ant Queen 2. Her goal was to make The Ant Queen 2 more exquisite than the models created by Glory. But as the anniversary of The Ant Queen 1 approached, Hai Rue did not do any promotions for it. Instead, they decided to hold a commemorative event for The Ant Queen 2. In fact, they planned to advertise it extensively. Although there was no news of The Ant Queen 2, the commemorative event for The Ant Queen 1 had a lot of rewards. Since it was close to Christmas, fans were still very interested in the event. Above all, Hai Rue also announced that they would be releasing a big surprise on the morning of the 16th. Everyone paid full attention to the commemorative event, but no one expected that it would be related to The Ant Queen 2. As Elder Nangong watched Hai Rue holding a commemorative event for an outdated film, he sneered, "If you're so capable, why don't you release a date for The Ant Queen 2? The Americans were already prepared, but Hai Rui had yet to make a move. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Elder Nangong originally planned to make a move on the Mo family's 2 children during Christmas. But it seemed it would no longer happen. At this time of the year, Beijing was at its coldest. But the cinemas were filled with excitement. This was because Hai Rui was already holding a commemorative event for the Ant Queen one. So, the cinemas were giving out a large number of tickets to receive a big surprise on the night of the 16th. What's the surprise? Have you received a ticket from Hai Rui yet? I'm not sure, but it looks interesting. I never thought that Hai Rui would hold such a big commemorative event for the Ant Queen one. They're really thoughtful. But I'm more interested in when the Ant Queen 2 will be released. Who cares? Anyway, the 16th is Sunday. We can go and see what the surprise is. Including us, the audience was very interested in Hai Rui's commemorative event. So, they all decided to receive a ticket on the night of the 16th to receive their surprise. Perhaps, no one expected that the surprise they received was to watch the premiere of The Ant Queen 2 at the cinema. Of course, the mystery movie tickets weren't limitless. In fact, each theater only had a limited number of tickets. This was just a gimmick arranged by Hai Rui. But, if everything went as expected, then mystery movie tickets would definitely work. It was the eve of the premiere, but Tongning was starting to feel nervous. In reality, she wasn't as carefree as she made herself out to be. Are you only starting to worry now? Mo Ting laughed as he looked at her reaction. Shouldn't you be worried about this a long time ago? I know there won't be a problem. I'm just used to being nervous, Tongning complained. But, rather than saying she was nervous, it was more accurate to say that she was looking forward to the fans' reactions. Chapter 1182. On the 16th, tickets for The Ant Queen were released to the public. Although it wasn't hard to find tickets in the trash, there were still more fans that were interested in attending the event. Soon, a long queue formed outside the theater. Everyone had come to the same conclusion. They truly loved The Ant Queen from the bottom of their hearts. The media gathered outside the theater to interview film fans about their thoughts on Hai Rui's event, and a lot of people expressed their opinions. It's such a cold day, so I don't really want to go out. But the cinema is quite lively. Plus, the event that Hai Rui is planning for The Ant Queen is very interesting. I'm actually looking forward to the mysterious gift that I have in my hands, a bespectacled young man said shyly. This is the perfect place for a date. The theater is also warm. That's right, I'm a fan of Tongning. Let's treat this event as a show of support for her. I hope The Ant Queen 2 can be released soon, another couple said. I'm a fan of Tongning's, so I had to come today. All of our fans are here. After saying this, the dozens of girls behind the little girl all raised their hands. The reporters could sense the passion in the theater, so they naturally had their own thoughts on the mysterious gift. I'm a little envious as I look at the long queue. Plus, the theater's gift this time is quite creative. Regardless, the most popular event this winter is definitely Hai Rui's commemorative event. I hope Hai Rui can continue to innovate and make everyone feel warm and happy. The cameras stopped here and did not continue. If Tongning wanted to see the audience's reaction, she would have to personally go to the theater to see what was going on. At this time, the people that had just arrived at the theater quickly found their seats. Were they here to watch a commemorative film? If it's a commemorative film, I think I'm not going to watch it. I don't think it's that simple. If it's a commemorative film, Hai Rui could have just released it to the public. They wouldn't have to be so secretive. That's right. Let's wait a little longer. What if we miss out on the surprise? Very quickly, the special seats were filled with the audience. Everyone had a dumbfounded look on their faces. Then, the lights in the theater went out. After the advertisement for everyone to be quiet, a giant termite appeared in front of everyone. Seeing this, everyone assumed that Hai Rui had invited them to watch The Ant Queen one. Some of the audience even wanted to leave because they had already watched it countless times. However, when the name of the movie was displayed on the big screen, everyone screamed. Look, it's two. Not one. Oh my God, is it really two? Really? Or is it just a trailer? The audience in the cinema were all surprised and asked each other, "Is this true? My God, I wasn't prepared at all." Seeing that no one was able to calm down, the projectionist in charge of the screening immediately stopped the film and stepped out to explain, "Welcome everyone. You're not mistaken, the film you're watching right now is Tongning's latest film, The Ant Queen 2. As you've all received a mysterious ticket, you're lucky enough to be invited to the first screening of the film. I hope everyone will remain calm and enjoy the film." "Wait, Miss Projectionist, let me calm down. I can't believe this." In the middle of the audience, a young man that loved sci-fi felt like he had hit the jackpot and needed some time to calm down. "Sir, the film will resume in 2 minutes. It's a 2, not a 1. I'm so excited, I'm going to post it on my WeChat moments." Me do. "Oh my God, Hai Rue sure knows how to create surprises. This is a super jackpot. So, we're the first batch of people to watch this film, right? We're so lucky." The fans expressed their excitement one after another. 2 minutes later, they expressed their own feelings. 2 minutes later, the film officially started. Everyone tried their best to calm down and immerse themselves in the film. After all, it was hard to watch a good sci-fi film afterwards. Film fans' WeChat moments exploded with comments of disbelief on a cold winter's night. "Are you guys watching The Ant Queen 2? Impossible, how is that possible? You're all acting cool, of course you're watching one. There's no news about 2 at all." Some of his friends fought bitterly over the film until he posted a photo of the film online. Only then did he gain the trust of his friends. Afterwards, the young man immediately went to check the movie app and discovered that The Ant Queen 2 had quietly gone online. It was actually screening. "Fuck, I'm not going to sleep. I want to go watch the film, but I can't get tickets. Hai Rue, help me. Do you have to book tickets for tomorrow? I'll hurry and book the first screening tomorrow." While Elder Nangong had no idea what was going on, The Ant Queen 2 began screening. To highlight the importance of the event and to show how valuable the fans that had previously received The Ant Queen's tickets, Hai Rue told the cinemas that they wouldn't be selling tickets that night. Instead, they would only be able to book tickets for the next day. Meanwhile, many of the fans that had thrown their tickets away found out that they were for The Ant Queen 2. As a result, the Ant Queen 2 actually ran back to the road and rummaged through the rubbish bins. In fact, this was happening all over Beijing. Even the cleaners were surprised by this. Why were the well-dressed young ladies and young masters rummaging through the rubbish bins? All these doubts were because Hai Rue's event was actually more effective than the usual promotions. After all, the first batch of people that were watching the film were currently showing off and promoting it like crazy. But the fans that didn't have The Ant Queen 2's tickets could only be envious. As a result, all the cinemas in the country were laughing like crazy. In one night, the advance tickets for The Ant Queen 2 had exploded. No agency could work with Hai Rue better than Tongning. After all, every time Tongning's film was screened, they made a ton of money. That way, even if the weather was cold and they had to stay up late, the staff at the cinemas would be able to keep their spirits up. So, was The Ant Queen 2 going to be popular? Was there a need to ask? No one expected Tongning and Mo Ting to do something like this. So, the next day, while everyone was talking about The Ant Queen 2, Elder Nangong was still in a daze. Chapter 1183. The assistant nervously placed the news on Elder Nangong's desk. "What's this all about?" Elder Nangong asked after reading through the news. Yesterday, Hai Rue held a commemorative event for The Ant Queen and teamed up with all the major cinema chains to come up with a mysterious plan. In the end, The Ant Queen 2 took the opportunity to screen. No one expected The Ant Queen 2 to screen like that. Everyone thinks that Hai Rue's plan is very interesting and successful. I heard that The Ant Queen 2 has already exceeded a few hundred million in the box office. The assistant looked at Elder Nangong from the corner of his eye as he explained, "I heard that it's so popular that it's hard to get a ticket." After hearing from his assistant, Elder Nangong stood up and headed straight for Nangong Quan's office. "Nangong Quan, you went back on your word." Nangong Quan was in the middle of meeting with the newcomers. Although he expected that Elder Nangong would come looking for him, he never expected it to be so early. "You guys can leave first." After the artists left, Nangong Quan and Elder Nangong were the only ones left in the office. Elder Nangong's eyes were filled with anger, like he wanted to rip his grandson to shreds. "If I told you that I didn't tell the Mo family anything, you wouldn't believe me, would you?" Nangong Quan laughed. "But grandfather, this is the truth. I didn't reveal anything to the Mo family. Besides, I've already said that even if Mo Ting doesn't know anything, there's nothing you can do to him. Did you think that I would still believe you?" However, Elder Nangong refused to believe that Mo Ting and Tongning had always been on guard. So, he was more willing to believe that Nangong Quan had leaked the information and that Nangong Quan and the others had teamed up to trick him. "It's up to you whether you want to believe me or not. If I wanted to tell them, Hai Rui wouldn't have waited until now to make a move. Since you broke your promise first, don't blame me for breaking my promise. If something happens, you will have to bear the consequences." After speaking, Elder Nangong left Nangong Quan's office, leaving Nangong Quan looking helpless. He never expected that Mo Ting and Tongning would release the Ant Queen 2 without a trace. But what could he do? Elder Nangong refused to believe it, but this was because of Tongning and Mo Ting's sharp senses. He had no choice but to admit defeat. After leaving Nangong Quan's office, Elder Nangong immediately made a phone call to the US. No matter what, the film had to be released in the US by the end of the month. Otherwise, there would be nothing to hold them back and his Christmas plans wouldn't go as smoothly. This couple is really cunning. Even so, his grandson still risked his life to tip off Mo Ting and Tongning. He simply didn't believe that Mo Ting and Tongning were that smart. The Ant Queen 2 was a huge hit not only because of the surprise event last night, but also because fans had been waiting for it for a long time. Plus, Tongning kept her word and The Ant Queen 2 was still above average. In fact, with a new post-production team, many people felt that the scenes looked more wild and wild. It looked more exciting and crazy. This time, another reason why the audience was so excited was because of Mo Ting. It was obvious that he had never learned any martial arts, but when he fought with the old dragon, he was able to land his fists on flesh. It was very realistic. This made the audience very satisfied. As a result, the box office and reputation soared. This was the current situation of The Ant Queen 2. After watching The Ant Queen 2, film fans were completely in awe of Tongning. No matter what she went through before filming, she was always able to satisfy everyone with the results she produced. She was the one that made domestic sci-fi films take a huge leap forward. As a result, sci-fi fans admired her and even referred to her as the mother of domestic sci-fi films. The Ant Queen 2 has improved compared to The Ant Queen. It's more solid, the story is more complete and the scenes are more daring. I used to look down on domestic sci-fi films, but now, we finally have a domestic sci-fi film. I'm so proud. I don't know why I cried the entire time I watched The Ant Queen 2. Perhaps, it's because it's a great film. The reviews were all positive. Of course, this had a lot to do with Hai Rui's strategy of being close to the public. Because of this, film fans were treated with respect. They could truly feel that Tongning's films were made for the sake of letting everyone see her work. She had no other motives. This was called sincerity. On the other hand, Springfall's previously completed films still hadn't been released yet. Hai Rui's move was unexpected and caught Elder Nangong off guard. Not only did he fail to predict the release of Parasites in advance, but by releasing it after The Ant Queen 2, it was like throwing a rock into the ocean. After all, with such a good foundation, would the audience still trust it? Previously, Nangong Quan had planned to release it before The Ant Queen 2 because he wanted to avoid Hai Rui. That way, the audience wouldn't be so picky and they would think that Parasite was accompanying them through the transition. But now, with a better film, who would want to watch it? Springfall's internal department had already begun to show signs of chaos. Everyone's dissatisfaction with Elder Nangong had reached a boiling point. With the addition of the fact that Parasites might be delayed indefinitely, everyone felt that Elder Nangong was just a vindictive scumbag that didn't care about the lives of others. He even poisoned his own grandson, so what could he do to others? One after another, a few higher-ups in the company handed in their resignations. Nangong Quan had already expected this day to come, so he understood and let them go after paying them their salaries. This, however, became another point of displeasure for Elder Nangong. The agency belongs to us and the money is in our hands. We can do whatever we want. Since when did these people have the right to tell us what to do? They also have their pride, Nangong Quan replied. By the way, don't you know why they left? If you hadn't leaked the news. I told you, I didn't leak anything. Whether you believe me or not, this is the truth, Nangong Quan said forcefully. Grandfather, you better not forget that I'm still the president. If you still want to make a move on me, then go ahead and do it. If I fall for your trick again, I'll kneel in front of you. Let's not talk about these useless things. Let's continue with the plan in the US. I've already said that I won't get involved in this matter. Whether the US takes action or not has nothing to do with me, Nangong Quan ended the conversation. I just want to know how you plan to take down the Mo family. Chapter 1184. If you get involved again, I won't call you my grandson anymore. After giving his warning, Elder Nangong turned and left Nangong Quan's office. From the way he spoke, it was obvious that he was serious this time. Nangong Quan did not try to defend himself. He knew that no matter what he said, it was useless. After Su Yuran found out that the Ant Queen 2 was suddenly released, she suspected that her husband had leaked information to the Mo family. But after returning home, Nangong Quan looked exhausted as he shook his head. If only I had the courage to do that. You really didn't do it? Nangong Quan shook his head again. I told you a long time ago that grandfather wouldn't be able to win against Tongning and Mo Ting. He didn't believe me. What did grandfather say? Grandfather had the same thoughts as you. He also thought I leaked the information. Is grandfather angry? Su Yuran suddenly realized a serious problem. No, little Eggshell said she's playing at a classmate's place today. I'll go pick her up right now. No need. It's not easy for little Eggshell to make friends again. Let her go. Nangong Quan stopped Su Yuran. But, as it turned out, Su Yuran's intuition was correct. Because, that night little Eggshell still did not return home. The two women sat in the living room with their arms crossed. In the end, they gave the classmate's parent a phone call. But, the parent replied, I personally escorted little Kai Air to the front door. Didn't she go in? After hearing this, Nangong Quan couldn't help but stand up. Little Eggshell had been taken away from the front door. What should we do now? Nangong Quan did not say a word as he pulled out his phone and gave Elder Nangong a phone call. His voice was no longer as calm as usual. In fact, it was a little shaky. Give Kai Air back to me. To guarantee that you won't get involved in this matter again, Kai Air will be staying with me for a while. After everything is over, I will naturally return her to you. Are you an animal? You won't even let your own great-granddaughter off the hook. Nangong Quan asked angrily. I told you, this matter has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. Since you know that Kai Air is my great-granddaughter, I won't mistreat her. That's all. After speaking, Elder Nangong hung up the phone. What did grandfather say? Su Yuran asked. What do I have to do to get little Eggshell back? He said after this is over. Nangong Quan replied helplessly. I seriously suspect that he really is sick. Su Yuran was also angry, but she was also worried. Little Eggshell's only a few years old, yet she's following such a monster. What if she gets traumatized? Plus, little Eggshell has been feeling a little cold for the past few days. Can that jerk take care of Kai Air? Seeing how anxious Su Yuran was, Nangong Quan stretched out his arms and hugged her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What do you have to be sorry for? Su Yuran cried. Everyone else has wronged you. What do you have to be sorry for? This night, the couple without their daughter by their side was destined to suffer from insomnia. So, in the middle of the night, while Nangong Quan was in his study room, Su Yuran couldn't help but give Tongning a phone call. She had no other choice. At home, she could be Nangong Quan's gentle wife and little Eggshell's adorable mother. But when faced with a jerk like Elder Nangong, there was nothing she could do. Ningjie, tell me, is there a way to free the father and daughter? Tongning never expected that the Ant Queen 2 had such a story behind its release. More importantly, she never expected that Elder Nangong would think that Nangong Quan had leaked the secret, so she and Ting decided to release the film in this way. If Elder Nangong continues to pressure me, I think I might actually kill someone one day. Don't be silly. The reason why Ting and I decided to release the film in this way was because we personally saw Elder Nangong sneak a peek at the actors' scripts. We were afraid that something unexpected would happen. Ningjie, I've actually leaked his plan to you. Compared to that jerk, I'm more willing to trust the two of you. Please help me save little Eggshell. After hearing this, Tongning felt a little upset. Yuan, the biggest help I can give you right now is to pretend that you never made this phone call. We won't take any precautions. Otherwise, little Eggshell may actually be in danger. What else couldn't a person like Elder Nangong do? But we won't run away. We will play along with whatever tricks Elder Nangong wants to play. Don't provoke him any further. Did the two families really have to fight to this extent? What benefit did Elder Nangong get from this? After hanging up the phone call with Su Yuran, Tongning was in a difficult position. Luckily, she and Ting were careful. Otherwise, they would have already fallen into the old man's trap. Meanwhile, Su Yuran did not explain too clearly to the US because she didn't know much about Elder Nangong's plans and methods. Of course, Hai Rui wasn't afraid. It seems we have no choice but to face them head-on. Otherwise, Elder Nangong will vent his anger on the Nangong couple and even a 5 or 6-year-old girl. After hearing this, Ting nodded his head. Even if Su Yuran hadn't leaked the secret, we wouldn't have suffered any losses. That old jerk has probably become a psychopath. I'm starting to hate the mess that the old man created in the past. Ting suddenly said. Don't say that. Grandfather never expected things to get to this point. Let's see what tricks Elder Nangong has up his sleeves. The trick that old Master Nangong wants to play is probably a weight that neither of you can bear. After all, he was merely using Hai Rui as a cover. His real target was the Mo family's 2 sons. Once Ting and Tongning's attention was diverted, he would naturally have a way to capture the 2 kids. So, even though there was a change in plans, Mad Dog Crisis would still be released in the US. They simply changed the method, but the result would not change. Since they were going to slander Elder Nangong, why would they care about using shameless methods? When the time came, they could simply accuse the Ant Queen 2 of having a staff member that had come into contact with the script of Mad Dog Crisis. That way, Hai Rui wouldn't have a chance to retaliate. After all, no matter how big Hai Rui was, it couldn't compete with Hollywood and the US film industry. And the best candidate for this staff member was the person that Elder Nangong had previously used. The person with the surname Zheng, the explosives technician. After all, he had previously worked in the US and had even worked on the set of The Ant Queen 2. Although the police were still looking for this person, it was a fact that he had once existed. So, the perfect thing was, he could use this identity to slander Hai Rui and there would be no evidence. Chapter 1185. The old man's viciousness was not something that a normal person could learn. He even held his own great-granddaughter hostage. So, for the sake of revenge, what else couldn't he do? So, at the end of December, Mad Dog Crisis was released in the US. However, as an established American film company, the release of Mad Dog Crisis did not garner the attention it deserved. It wasn't until the next day, when news of plagiarism broke out, that the American audience started to pay attention to the film. OMG! There's a rumor that our film plagiarized an Asian film? I can't believe it. But the film was indeed released a little earlier than expected. However, I don't think an Asian could write such a good script. Are you kidding me? Which Asian film isn't plagiarized from the West? The person who said this is quite shameless. Just like that, the popularity of the film increased. After all, it involved a clash of cultures between countries. Plus, Hollywood was a place that everyone in the industry flocked to. So, to say that a Hollywood company plagiarized an Asian film? Even if the Westerners were beaten to death, they wouldn't believe it. Because of this rumor, the Americans began to pay attention to Mad Dog Crisis and The Ant Queen 2. On one hand, the Americans ridiculed the East's techniques, but on the other hand, they praised their own country's progress. They were indeed shameless. Even though Mad Dog Crisis was released so early, the Americans still managed to use it to create hype and profit from it. Not long after, the American film company announced that they would be dealing with the matter seriously. After an investigation, they discovered that an explosives technician with the surname Zeng had leaked the script. They also found evidence that the technician worked on the set of The Ant Queen 2. We will be sanctioning the Eastern Film Company and will immediately send a letter to our lawyers. We hope that The Ant Queen 2 will immediately stop screening as a sign of respect for our film. The Americans expressed their stance, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was that their actions caused the audience to fly into the air. Plagiarism was something that no one could tolerate, especially since it was produced by their favorite artist, Tongning, and their biggest agency, Hairu. If their work couldn't be guaranteed, then there was no hope for domestically produced sci-fi films. Netizens began to express their opinions online. I think the Americans are quite shameless. They're good at distorting the truth. The Ant Queen 2 was released first, yet they're being accused of plagiarizing them. Don't you think it's disgusting? Hollywood is bullying its customers just because it's big, right? I've watched 2 movies. The similarities are in a supporting role and the lines are similar. But I can't tell who copied who. Does Hollywood need to plagiarize? Forgive me for being blunt, but the same line would be more reasonable if it was used in The Ant Queen 2. But it's completely out of place in that American film. I've seen that American film too. To be honest, it's not even at the level of Hollywood. The plot is a patchwork, and the main character doesn't even have a main storyline. It's just blood and torture. If we're talking about plagiarism, it's definitely America who plagiarized us. All of a sudden, the internet fell into a heated discussion. Of course, Elder Nangong also led the way. Many people began to take a neutral stance. At the very least, they would only be willing to contribute to the box office after confirming the rights to the movie. But The Ant Queen 2 was currently in the midst of its popularity. For something like this to happen, it was like experiencing a snowstorm. Meanwhile, the American team reacted quickly. As soon as they announced that they would be discussing with Hairu, they immediately flew to Beijing. On the surface, the American team appeared to be serious and aggressive. But only the people involved knew why they were doing all this. Su Yuran and Nangong Quan sat at home and looked at the news. They were both angry and shocked. If Little Eggshell wasn't in Elder Nangong's hands, they may have already stepped forward in the name of justice. But now that Little Eggshell was in Elder Nangong's hands, the couple did not dare to act recklessly. The public wanted Hairu to give an explanation. This time, it involved a sense of pride. If even a company like Hairu plagiarized, then what hope did the entertainment industry have? Because of this, Fang Yu personally held a press conference and told the media, "Thank you for your attention to this plagiarism scandal. On behalf of Hairu, I would like to give the public a response." Firstly, the script for The Ant Queen 2, produced by Hairu and produced by Hairu, was written entirely by the CEO of Hairu. The original script is here and there is a time stamp on it. In other words, the contents of The Ant Queen 2 were confirmed before filming even began. At that time, the explosives technician had yet to join the crew. So, how did he get us to plagiarize? Not only that, the outline and the first version of the script in the hands of the actors all have a time stamp on it. In other words, nothing was changed during filming. So, how did he plagiarize? Secondly, I'm sure everyone has heard that during the filming of The Ant Queen 2, there was a man-made explosion. The explosives technician, surnamed Zeng, is the culprit. The police are currently trying to track him down. According to one of our actors, the explosives technician has secretly looked at our scripts during his spare time. Is it possible that he escaped to the US and leaked our script to the Americans? Thirdly, we have done a thorough analysis of the contents of both films. I'm sure everyone has an idea of what's going on. From a plot point of view, Which film is the most suitable for the overlapping parts of the two films? I'm sure everyone can tell which is more diligent, a film that is created with heart and soul, or a film that wears the crown of Hollywood but has nothing but an empty shell. The following are Tang Ning's exact words. I want to pass them on to everyone. I've never thought about surpassing anyone, and I've never thought about going to Hollywood. I simply want our country's own sci-fi film to rise. I've previously expressed my opinion on Hollywood, and I don't think that we're any better than Hollywood. So, I hope everyone can trust that The Ant Queen 2 is the real deal and has nothing to do with foreigners. As for the American suggestions, I will leave it to our legal team to handle. Chapter 1186. Tang Ning's meaning was clear. There was no need for them to lick Hollywood's boots. She wanted everyone to believe that their country could also produce good films. Fang Yu's words represented Hai Rui. In other words, Hai Rui would never admit to plagiarism. In fact, they even provided evidence of the original work. Their motive was to make everyone believe that the Ant Queen tomb belonged to them and that it had nothing to do with the disgusting foreigners. Of course, Hai Rui's firm attitude gave everyone some peace of mind. I've seen both movies. To be fair, that American movie about Rabbit Dog is complete bullshit. Even the Americans are trying to ride on our popularity? I'm sure that this is an independent film from Hai Rui. How could they plagiarize a lousy film? Are the Americans playing a joke on us? I firmly support Tang Ning and The Ant Queen 2. I hope Hai Rui can win the lawsuit and shut the Americans up. Hollywood is starting to decline and the art battlefield is slowly shifting to the east. So, I don't think there's any reason for everyone to not have faith in Tang Ning. Even if Hai Rui doesn't explain themselves, I will still support Tang Ning. Hai Rui quickly conducted a survey on the Beijing audience. The results showed that everyone was more willing to believe in their own country's films. Even if the other party was Hollywood, they would never admit defeat. This was a huge comfort to Tang Ning and Mo Ting. But the American lawyers still came knocking on their door. Mo Ting asked Lu Che to arrange for everyone to be seated in the meeting room. Afterwards, he told Lu Che to go home and pick up Tang Ning. He also told Fang Yu to bring along his team of lawyers. After all, not everyone had the chance to see Mo Ting directly. Fang Yu's head hurt. He hated dealing with foreigners the most. Although there were reasonable people, the people sitting in front of him today were obviously not easy to deal with. I would like to see the person in charge of Hai Rui regarding the plagiarism. I am the vice president of Hai Rui, Fang Yu replied firmly. The man shrugged his shoulders and pulled out a document. The copyright laws in the US are very strict. So, before we get to the bottom of this matter, we hope that your company can temporarily stop the screening of the film. Once the truth has been revealed, we will release it again. Of course, the premise is that you can prove that you did not plagiarize. I've never seen someone do it so naturally, Fang Yu laughed, but he did not take the documents from the man. If the court in the US decides that you plagiarized, then not only will you have to stop screening the film, you will also have to pay a huge sum of money. Have you Americans finished talking? Fang Yu laughed. Since you are on our soil, then you should act according to our laws. We have also filed a lawsuit against your American company. In fact, we have sent a team of 8 people to represent us. Not only that, we have the outline of the script and evidence. We even hired the world's greatest screenwriter to analyze the story. Let's see who plagiarized who. Fang Yu said calmly, since you don't want your face anymore, we never thought that you would retreat. But it doesn't matter. We will go through the proper channels. Let us find out the truth together. More importantly, your company seems to have done this more than once, right? If I remember correctly, 5 years ago, your company also paid a compensation of $30 million for a similar case. Are you trying to do the same thing again? Do you think we are easy to bully? The other party had never expected Fang Yu to be so domineering. Furthermore, he had thoroughly investigated their backgrounds. From the looks of it, it was impossible to suppress Hai Rui. Didn't an Eastern film and television company kneel before a Hollywood film and television company? Of course, this was their own confidence. It had nothing to do with anyone else. Things were no longer the same as they were many years ago. Did they still think that they were great? If you continue to remain silent, then I'm sorry, but I won't be accompanying you any longer. Hai Rue's lawyers will contact you soon. As for your request to stop screening and pay compensation, you must be dreaming. After speaking, Feng Yu stood up and left the rest of the matter to the lawyers. Did these foreigners really think that Hai Rue was easy to bully? Although Hai Rue was confident that they would be able to prove his innocence, the entire organization needed to put in a lot of effort. Feng Yu was in charge of dealing with the public, while Lu Che was in charge of collecting evidence. Meanwhile, Mo Ting and Tongning couldn't sit around and do nothing. So, they tried to find a way to invite world-renowned screenwriters, directors and authors to evaluate the content of the incident. So, Elder Nangong's motive had been achieved. Seeing that Hai Rue was spinning like a top, he took the opportunity to announce the release date of Parasite. Trying to gain popularity at this time? Was there something wrong with his brain? Didn't Elder Nangong realize that he was taking advantage of someone when they were down? Of course he knew. But he still wanted to discuss the Mo family and Mo Ting. Elder Nangong's actions were extremely annoying. But that wasn't his motive. Because they needed to evaluate the content of the film, Mo Ting and Tongning had to travel overseas to invite experts. But because of this, Elder Nangong had the opportunity to kidnap the Mo brothers. He had already secretly taken on the role of a teacher for the Mo brothers at an elite school. He had used all sorts of methods. At first, he used money to tempt them. In the end, he used his family to threaten them. He did all of this just so that he could give Mo Ting and Tongning a Christmas present. That afternoon, after lunch break, the Mo brothers disappeared from the school. In fact, no one knew how they disappeared. Not long after, the teacher called the police and notified the school. Then he contacted the parents of the parents. At this time, Tongning and Mo Ting were at the airport. But as soon as they heard that the child had gone missing, Tongning's expression was unreadable. "What's wrong?" "The child has gone missing," Tongning said. "Our child has disappeared from the school." After hearing this, Mo Ting immediately left the airport with Tongning and personally gave the school a phone call to see if the child had been picked up by a family member or something else. But the school told them that the child had disappeared into thin air during lunch break. At that time, the security cameras in the dormitory were broken, so they couldn't see anything. Chapter 1187. The school immediately blocked the news and began a search. But the culprits seemed to have planned this from the start. Without leaving any traces behind, they took the two boys away. Meanwhile, the teacher in charge of the two boys pretended to cry because he knew he couldn't afford to take responsibility. So, apart from notifying the school and contacting their parents, he also called the police. So, by the time Tongning and Mo Ting arrived at the school, the police had already arrived at the same time. They began to investigate everything that was suspicious, but they couldn't find a single clue. But where did the two boys go? "Mr. and Mrs. Mo, I'm so sorry. The school has failed to keep an eye on things. Now that something like this has happened, I will cooperate with the police as soon as possible to find the two young masters. Please trust us." At this moment, Tongning couldn't hear a word. She simply stared at the bed that her two sons once lay on without saying a word. Mo Ting looked at Tongning worriedly and gestured to the principal, "Please leave for a moment." The principal originally wanted to do some more work for the couple, but seeing Tongning in a daze, he did not dare to disturb her any further. "None of this is real," Tongning murmured as she ran her hand across the cute blue bed. None of this is real. We will find them," Mo Ting replied. "Trust me, we will definitely find them. Now isn't the time to be sad. Listen to me. I should have known. Elder Nangong was willing to poison Nangong Quan just so he could fight for an opportunity to go against Hai Rue. It turns out this was his motive." Tongning turned around and looked at Mo Ting in self-blame. "I shouldn't have left them. This isn't your fault. The most important thing right now is to find the kids." Tongning remained silent for a moment as she tried to calm herself down. She then nodded her head. We do need to find our sons. But the culprit hasn't left behind any clues. How are we supposed to find them? Will Elder Nangong allow us to find them? He will. Mo Ting replied confidently. Tongning held back her tears as she approached Mo Ting's side. Even though she almost sprained her ankle on the way out the door. The two kids from the Mo family had gone missing. They had disappeared from the school for no apparent reason. The media immediately smelled the scent of explosive news. Soon, they surrounded the aristocratic school, so that not even a drop of water could escape. Not long after, the news appeared on every major website. In fact, it was the front-page headline. Famous artist Tongning and Hai Rue CEO Mo Ting's beloved son went missing from school on XX day. The police are currently investigating and have no further information. Gemini is suspected to have been kidnapped and Tongning's son has disappeared from school. Famous artist Tongning's beloved son has gone missing. The police are searching for the killer. As soon as Tongning found out that her son had gone missing, she immediately gave Su Yuran a phone call. Give me Elder Tang's phone number. Ning Jie, I've seen the news. Yuan, I don't have time to talk right now. I just want to find my son. Tongning's voice trembled slightly. Su Yuran did as she was told and sent the phone number to Tongning. Afterwards, Tongning followed the string of numbers and gave Elder Nangong a phone call. Give me back my child, Tongning said without saying anything else. I don't understand what you're saying. Things have already gotten to this point. Why are you still pretending? Tongning asked. If you have a problem, come to the adults. What's the point of dealing with a defenseless child? Why? Why? Because I want to see you break down right now, Elder Nangong laughed loudly. Elder Mo laughed out loud. Tongning, tell the Mo family that I won't be returning your two treasures. Treat it as payment for the Mo family. I'll also tell you that I will find my son, Tongning said through gritted teeth, one word at a time. Let's give it a try then. After speaking, Elder Nangong hung up the phone. Tongning did not receive any news from him, but she was certain that Elder Nangong was the mastermind. Mo Ting had already asked Lu Che to find the best detective in the country and he was currently on his way to the school. The kidnapping of a famous artist child was a sensational news for Beijing. Within half a day, it had become a hot topic. At this point in time, Tongning had no way of knowing what Elder Nangong's bottom line was, nor could she guarantee the survival of her two children. She simply hoped that her two precious children wouldn't end up like Nangong Quan and die silently after being poisoned. That would be too cruel. Over at Hai Rue, Fang Yu controlled the public opinion and was in charge of PR. But the news spread too quickly, so no one could suppress it. It didn't take long before everyone found out about the incident, whether it was the Tang family, friends, or even Elder Mo. After finding out that the mess he had left behind had harmed his two great-grandsons, the usually optimistic old man felt extremely upset. Therefore, they each used their own connections to find a lot of famous detectives in the police world, hoping to find some clues. The scene was very chaotic. It was a tough day, but Tongning couldn't think of anything. She didn't know who to look for or what to do. Meanwhile, Mo Ting continued to expand his search radius in search of any possible clues the two children might have left behind, but, after a day passed, they still didn't find anything. Meanwhile, after Nangong Quan found out about this matter, he wanted nothing more than to kill Elder Nangong with his own hands. He never imagined that his grandfather's actions against Hai Rue were just a ruse. Instead, his real target was the Mo family's two children. How despicable was this? He couldn't tolerate it. Quan, what should we do now? Contact Mo Ting and cooperate with the police. Not only do we need to find the Mo family's children, we also need to find our own. This time, Nangong Quan did not hesitate as he gave Mo Ting a phone call and told the police everything he knew, including the fact that he had been threatened. Soon, the police arrived to pick Nangong Quan up. As a result, the search team formed by the two fathers was officially formed. They were currently at the school. Even though it was late at night, they were still in a meeting. This is a private school for nobles. If he didn't have a pass, he wouldn't have been able to get in. So, we've narrowed down to 1 or 2 accomplices. If there were too many of them, it's possible that they would be exposed. Plus, they're people from the school that are very familiar with the 2 children. We've already questioned the teacher in charge of the school. She said that she had no idea what was going on. The other team will apply for an arrest warrant and interrogate the person involved. In other words, they were going to capture Elder Nangong and interrogate him. The police began to analyze the situation. Ting sat in the back with Nangong Quan beside him. When we find the child this time, your grandfather will be dead. Chapter 1188. Nangong Quan did not say a word. It seemed, deep down, he had the same thought and it was very strong. After a while, he finally said, I'm afraid he won't return the kids to you even if he dies. I will find my sons. Ting's attitude was as determined as Tongning's. In that case, what do you think? I think we should continue to search the school. When the teacher in charge of lunch breaks discovers that the kids are missing within 20 minutes. How did he manage to take them away from the school? He had no choice but to hide them, Ting replied. I agree with you. Everyone is passionate about finding evidence, clues, and suspicious people outside the school. But what if the kids were still at the school from the beginning and hadn't been moved? What I'm afraid of is, Elder Nangong was going to tell them to use drugs or poison. In a moment, let's split up and look for suspicious places in the school. I have a feeling that my sons are nearby. The feeling of blood being thicker than water made Ting unable to close his eyes for even a second. All he had to do was think about the possibility of his 2 children suffering, so much so that he felt like he was about to go crazy. He no longer cared about Hai Rui and had already forgotten about the plagiarism incident. Because Fang Yu naturally knew how to deal with these things. After hearing Ting's words, Nangong Quan patted him on the shoulder. The culprit wants to see you panic and suffer. So, you can't lose your composure. Ting nodded his head, even though he already had the urge to kill someone. Afterwards, the 2 fathers identified all the suspicious places in the school and took advantage of the fact that no one was around to investigate them. Although the police had already done this before as fathers, they believed they could do it more carefully than the police. Room after room, floor after floor, including toilets and garbage dumps, the 2 of them did not let go of anything. In the end, they found Zichen's shoes in the storeroom on the top floor of the school. As expected, they were hidden here the entire time and were later moved. It didn't take long before the police cleaned up the storeroom and collected evidence. They also took a sample of the fingerprints on the shoes. But, in the end, it turned out that the fingerprints belonged to the 2 brothers. The culprit was very cautious and was obviously wearing gloves. The clues were cut off once again. However, this shoe made the 2 fathers very upset. The search continued and the night was still long. Tongning didn't dare to rest, even though she couldn't calm down. Seeing his little family split apart like this, Elder felt extremely upset and blamed himself. Perhaps, the one who started the trouble should be the one to untie it. He thought that he had to meet Elder Nangong before he could let go. Therefore, as soon as the sky brightened, he put on the suit that he hadn't worn for a long time and then tidied himself up to look like he did 20 years ago. Then he drove to Elder Nangong's residence and rang the doorbell, waiting for Elder Nangong to appear. The reunion of 2 enemies wasn't as exciting as he thought it would be. Old man Nangong seemed to have predicted that he would come, so he prepared a seat for him. If you had appeared earlier, perhaps things wouldn't have turned out like this. You wouldn't have caused such a commotion, and your grandson and granddaughter-in-law wouldn't be looking for you everywhere. Lingo, it's been so many years, but you haven't changed at all. You're still as ruthless as ever, Elder laughed. Elder laughed. I admit that I didn't do anything wrong 20 years ago. All these years, I've had a clear conscience. But, now that you've created such a huge mess, how do you plan to clean it up? In the end, it's still a matter between the older generation. Why are you making things difficult for the younger generation? Why didn't you say this earlier? Elder Nangong laughed. Why are you hiding behind your grandson? Why don't you come out? If you had come out and faced me earlier, I wouldn't have targeted the innocent. I never expected you to be so serious. Elder Mo laughed in self-ridicule. Elder Mo laughed in self-mockery. So, since I'm here today, Brother Lin, can you be merciful and let the kids live a peaceful life? They're just trying to make a living in the entertainment industry and aren't that powerful. If they lose their children, they'll be devastated. If you want me to tell you where my children are, I can. But the price you'll have to pay may be a little heavy, Elder Nangong said as he looked at Elder Mo from the corner of his eyes. You need to think this through. We're already so old. What's there to be concerned about? Elder Mo laughed. Just tell me what you want. Kneel down and admit your wrongdoings. We'll use the underworld's methods to resolve our grudges. From now on, I won't cause any trouble for the Mo family. Kneel. Elder Nangong actually wanted Elder Mo to kneel. In other words, he was admitting that everything he did was wrong. I told you to think this through. Your great-grandson and grandson are waiting for you to save their lives. Elder Mo did not say a word as he pulled out a dagger and stabbed it into the back of his hand. I can't kneel anymore. But I'm aware that there's a way to repay a debt in the underworld. I'll cripple my right hand to repay you for 20 years of loneliness. But don't forget, even if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have escaped your fate of being thrown into prison. Seeing this, Elder Nangong laughed. If you were this straightforward from the start, I wouldn't have wasted so much effort. I've been in prison for 20 years and you've crippled one of your hands. Once I've vented my anger, I'll be done with it. So, can you let the kids go? Elder Nangong pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket and threw it in front of Elder Mo. Stop the bleeding. Your 2 great-grandchildren live at home. Little Eggshell likes them, so I brought them here. I didn't compromise because of you, I did it because of my great-granddaughter. I wanted to take you down with me, but she's still young. I must say, the Mo family's 2 rascals are quite likable, Elder Nangong said as he looked up into the sky. I know Mo Ting won't let me off for kidnapping his son. But with this hand of yours, I've still won. After 20 years of grudges, he saw Mo Ting's painful expression and Elder Mo's apology. So he no longer clung to Mo Ting. Even though he didn't think he'd come out unscathed. If you want to sue me, then go ahead. Chapter 1189. Elder Mo didn't feel good. But a little while later, the police arrived at Elder Nangong's home. Because of Nangong Quan's testimony, the police wanted to interrogate him. But Elder Nangong stretched out his hands towards the police. I kidnapped them. Arrest them. In reality, Elder Mo had already hidden the injury on the back of his hand. So, this incident could be turned into a small one as long as it was handled properly. But Elder Nangong didn't leave himself any way out as he confessed everything to the police. Not only did I kidnap the Mo family's children, but I also ordered someone to kill Chiu Jin, the explosion at Hai Rui and the poisoning of my grandson. The police pulled out a pair of handcuffs and cuffed Elder Nangong. At this time, Elder Nangong laughed. This is indeed more suitable for me. I also feel that prison is more like a home. Soon, Little Eggshell ran out of the room with the Mo family's 2 children. All 3 of them were safe and sound. Great-grandfather, Mo Zishi immediately ran over to Elder Mo. You're not hurt, are you? Elder Mo asked. Mo Zishi and Little Eggshell both shook their heads. Only Mo Zichen placed his gaze on Elder Nangong. Zichen? I will definitely visit you from now on, Mo Zichen said as he watched Nangong Quan leave. No one knew what he meant, but he did say those words. It seemed Mo Zichen and Elder Nangong had a secret relationship. Soon, Mo Ting and the others received news that the children had been found. So, the 3 of them immediately rushed over to Elder Nangong's home. As soon as she saw her 2 sons, Tang Ning immediately hugged them in her arms. Thank God you're fine. Thank God, Mommy? Mo Zishi said in a low voice. You're hugging me too tightly. Sorry, Mommy was too happy. Tang Ning immediately loosened her grip. Tongning immediately let go of Nangong Quan and little Eggshell pounced into Nangong Quan's arms. What exactly happened? As soon as he saw Elder Mo at Elder Nangong's residence and saw the wound on the back of his hand, Mo Ting immediately questioned him. That's a grudge between the previous generation. From now on, you won't be threatened anymore, you little brat. Grandfather Mo said casually. After speaking, Elder Mo turned around without saying a word. Mo Ting and the others looked at each other. They had no idea what had happened between the two elders. Why did Elder Nangong suddenly agree to let them go? The media gathered outside and surrounded Elder Nangong's home. Not long after, the appearance of Mo Ting and the others caused the media to be in an uproar. After all, the children had been found safe and sound. So, facing the cameras, the couple did not say a word. They simply protected their child as they left the circle of reporters. All these things were still waiting for the few of them to solve the mystery. But no matter what, they had to first take the children home and comfort them before dealing with the matter. After returning to Hyatt Regency, Tongning first gave the kids a bath and checked to see if they had any injuries. From the looks of it, Elder Nangong did not intend to hurt them. But Tongning couldn't understand why Elder Nangong, who had staked everything on revenge, would suddenly give up and confess his crimes to the police. Mommy, will the old man with the mustache go to jail? Mo Zichen suddenly asked as he helped the two rascals put on their clothes. For such a young child to be able to ask such a question so clearly, Tongning was quite surprised. But she believed that Mo Zichen truly understood what going to jail meant. So, she asked, in that case, son, do you want the old man to go to jail? Mo Zichen shook his head. He didn't hurt me. He wouldn't go that far. In that case, son, let mommy ask you, why did you plead for mercy on behalf of someone that kidnapped you? Tongning asked curiously. This strange old man kept saying a lot of strange things to me and my brother. He probably thought that we wouldn't understand, but I did. He said that the reason why he hated that female artist was because she indirectly caused the death of his wife. That's what he said. Mo Zichen's explanation completely shocked Tongning. Zichen, it's rare for you to say so much to mommy. In fact, it was so complete and you expressed your feelings so accurately. He even sat in his room and looked at photos for most of the night. Needless to say, the woman in the photos was Elder Nangong's wife. I think he's lonely and pitiful. After hearing this, Tongning stretched out her arms and hugged Mo Zichen. Everyone said that Mo Zichen was a warm and sunny man, but in reality, Mo Zichen's emotions weren't as rich as Mo Zichen's. Not only could he express himself, but he was also able to look at things from the perspective of an adult at such a young age. This was unbelievable. So, did you comfort him? I told him that the woman in the photos was beautiful, Mo Zichen replied. He held onto my hand and cried. In reality, Tongning could understand what Elder Nangong was feeling. He was so close to getting his revenge, but he suddenly felt empty inside. Especially when he looked at the cute kids around him, one of whom understood him. Plus, little Eggshell was his great-granddaughter. So, his desire for revenge was slowly extinguished. Then, Elder Mo showed up at his doorstep to apologize, allowing him to finally let go. Elder Nangong's actions proved that there was no such thing as absolute good or absolute evil in this world. After Elder Nangong entered the police station, he refused all visits and refused to find a lawyer for him. He felt that after spending so much time in prison, he was more suited for prison life. That night, the conversation between Tongning and Mo Zichen became a secret between the mother and son. Elder Nangong had left behind a lot of messes. For example, the incident with the American Film Agency and the mess that he caused at Springfall. But in the end, Elder Nangong came to a realization on his own. Unknowingly, Nangong Quan's hatred was extinguished. After Elder Mo found out the truth of the matter, he became even more reclusive. The grudge from more than 20 years ago allowed him to understand a lot of things and understand a lot of people. A few days later, Hai Rui revealed everything that Elder Nangong had done to the public, including how he had colluded with the American Film Agency to frame them for plagiarism. Elder Nangong came clean about the matter, but the Americans refused to admit defeat. Although he was the one that started everything, he no longer had a say in how things developed. Chapter 1190. So, Nangong Quan stepped out and took responsibility for everything. He told Hollywood to cause trouble for Springfall and to stop bothering Hai Rui and the Ant Queen too. After all, their actions were a disgrace to Hollywood and it wasn't worth publicizing to the world. Nangong Quan's actions were acknowledged by his peers, so he tried his best to deal with the Americans. But how could Mo Ting allow Nangong Quan to face a problem like this? Hai Rui had evidence and they had the confidence to announce to the world that The Ant Queen 2 was 100% an original film and that Hollywood had cheated. Afterwards, Hollywood responded by denying the agency's work and status. In fact, they even announced that they had stolen other people's scripts multiple times and had lost a lawsuit. Everything was clear. This time, it was indeed produced by an Asian person. It broke the norm and shocked everyone. Although a lot of Europeans and Americans did not acknowledge the East's culture and arts, they heard that even Hollywood was going to plagiarize it. This was enough to prove the film's success. As a result, the overseas rights to The Ant Queen 2 sold like hotcakes. Soon, it was announced that the film would be released in theaters all over the world. The foreigners couldn't wait to see the standard of a sci-fi film produced by an Asian. As a result, Tong Ning's fame once again climbed to new heights. In fact, she was invited to many events overseas, but she rejected every single one of them. In fact, she confidently announced to the public, "I will only focus on making films. The work in front of the stage is the job of the actors and celebrities. I hope everyone can give me some personal space and leave the bigger stage for newcomers with potential." After the kidnapping of the Mo family's 2 children, Tong Ning only had one wish. She wanted to spend as much time and energy on her husband and children as possible. At least, she knew what was more important to her. Not long after, Tong Ning heard that Elder Nangong's case had been heard in court. In the end, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison with 1 year of probation. Elder Nangong happily accepted this result. For him, it was a form of release. Just as Elder Nangong was sent to the detention center, Nangong Quan finally received permission to visit him. However, the first thing Elder Mo said was, "This grandson of mine can't even compare to that 3-year-old boy from the Mo family. Forget it. In the future, if little Eggshell really has to choose one of the brothers as her husband, tell her to choose the younger one. He's smart and not the older one. Grandpa, let's go. Don't come again, lest we all feel uncomfortable." The old man was very calm, because he felt that in the end, this was his final destination. When he went out, he really felt uncomfortable all over. In the end, Nangong Quan left with Su Yuran. Just as the old man wished, he would never return. Although it's cruel, I'll do as Grandpa says. He'll feel better this way. Nangong Quan should be thanking Elder Nangong. In the end, he did not commit a bloody murder, nor did he become a murderous maniac, nor did he become a psychopath that harmed children. This could be considered as leaving the Nangong clan with one last shred of dignity. Following this, the New Year's Fei Tian Awards was about to enter the judging phase. This year, Hai Rui was going to submit a list of nominees. When the time came, it would once again be dedicated to The Ant Queen 2. But by this time, Tong Ning and Mo Ting no longer cared about their reputation. That night, Tong Ning and Mo Ting did not attend the awards ceremony. Instead, they stayed in the study room and discussed the script for The Ant Queen 3. "We've already written about father and daughter and teacher and student. What should we write about The Ant Queen 3? Tong Ning asked as she leaned comfortably against Mo Ting. "I've already thought about it," Mo Ting replied. "Huh." Tong Ning looked at him in surprise. "I'll write about a broken friendship," Mo Ting replied. "A pair of friends that grew up together. One of them is the smarter one, while the other is the dumber one. The smarter one always asks the dumber one to do things for him. Afterwards, he picks out things that he doesn't want and gives them to the dumber one. He even acts like he's doing everything for them. That's why the dumber one trusts him. Recently, the smarter one decided to take a risk and do something big. But he needed a bait to lure the snake out of its hole. Since he had no other choice, he decided to use the dumber one. The dumber one thought that his smart friend had always treated him well, so he went to a dangerous place. When the smart friend saw that the dumber was willing to do anything, he began to reflect on himself and tried to stop the dumber from throwing his life away. But the dumber one made friends with someone in the same line of work. The passerby exposed the smart friend, so the dumber one began to hate the smart friend. The story will begin with the two of them. After hearing this, Tongning laughed. Although what you said sounds like a tongue twister, I understand what you're trying to say. In fact, I think it's very interesting and can create a lot of twists and turns. President Mo, I think the Ant Queen 3 will be more interesting than the previous two. After all, Mo Ting never wrote superficial things when writing scripts. His content was always deep and explored human nature. The previous two films were relatively simple. They were simply father and daughter, teacher and student. But this time, the friends were more complicated. In that case, I'll have to thank you, Mrs. Mo. Your compliment means a lot to me. Tongning lay on Mo Ting's back and placed a kiss on his cheek. So much has happened, I'm tired. Come to the front, Mo Ting ordered. Tongning walked around him, laid down on Mo Ting's lap and closed her eyes to get some rest. President Mo, I think we should start filming the Ant Queen 3 next spring. In that case, Mrs. Mo, do you still want me to act? Mo Ting asked gently as he lowered his head. Do you want me to play the smart friend or the dumb fool? What do you think about getting Bai Chendong to play the fool? Tongning asked with a smile. He's a fool to begin with. Why would he need to act? Tongning was still sleepy, so she smiled gently. There are plenty of good actors out there. We can take our time to choose. Mo Ting watched as she slowly fell asleep, so he lowered his head and placed a kiss on her lips. In that case, I love you. Can you hear me? Tongning mumbled as if she didn't hear him clearly. Chapter 1191. A year later, on the set of The Ant Queen 3. This time, Mo Ting's character was indeed a stupid idiot. In fact, this idiot wasn't easy to act. But the smart friend did not choose Bai Chendong because he was about to have his second child. Instead, the smart friend chose an actor that superstar media had scouted out. His name was Li Xingyi, and he was extremely good at acting. The child was now 1 year older. At this time, Tongning often visited Mo Ting on set. She felt that watching him act was a form of enjoyment. But now, she had become his assistant and took care of his daily life. To be honest, Lin Qian's taste was becoming more and more accurate. The actor that she chose was indeed outstanding in all aspects. It was a shame that he had been buried by his previous agency. For some reason, even though his appearance and acting skills were good, he never became popular. He had wasted 10 years of his youth in the industry, so much so that a few strands of white hair had appeared on his head. Now that Tongning was watching him act with Mo Ting, she felt both nervous and excited. Meanwhile, as the assistant director, Bai Junyi was filming the scenes of the other supporting actors. Unlike Mo Ting's team of experienced actors, the young actors' scenes were a lot more unfamiliar. Cut. Your expression isn't right. Read it. Cry harder. Relax, relax. Exaggerate your expression. During her free time, Tongning watched Bai Junyi direct films and couldn't help but smile. It seemed she hadn't misjudged this madman in the past. After transitioning from artistic films, he seemed to have found his true path and had become addicted to sci-fi. His idea itself was very bold, so the resulting effect was more vivid and full of drama. Xiao Man stood behind Tongning as she watched Bai Junyi's scenes. What do you think? Tongning asked. It's artistic, Xiao Man replied. With Bai Junyi, the Ant Queen 3 will be even more perfect, Tongning sighed. I heard that you guys rarely celebrate anniversaries after getting married. Xiao Man changed the topic to Tongning's personal life. How did you know? If I'm guessing, President Mo must be preparing a surprise for you, Xiao Man said as she crossed her arms. Sorry, I can't keep things a secret. Tongning smiled gently as she raised her eyebrows seductively. Because to her, every day was an anniversary, there was no need to celebrate. The couple had been together for so many years and had rarely been apart. To her, this was already the biggest gift. All she wanted was for Ting to be together forever. Even so, Tongning had to admit, after hearing about this from Xiaoman, she was filled with anticipation. But Ting didn't show any signs. Especially since in 2 days' time, it would be their wedding anniversary. Ting was busy filming and seemed even busier than before. The couple didn't even speak to each other. It was likely Ting had already forgotten about their wedding anniversary. So, where would he find the time to prepare a surprise? Thinking of this, Tongning smiled. Xiaoman's words had actually sunk in. But she never imagined Ting was in such a rush to film because he wanted to make time. That night, while Tongning was asleep, Ting boarded a plane to France with her. When she woke up, she found herself on the plane. What's going on? Where are we going? Ting hugged her and said gently, You've been my wife for so many years, but you've never had a proper vacation. But you can't just take me away like this, Tongning said helplessly as she looked at the pajamas on her body. I've prepared a change of clothes for you. You can change into them when you get off the plane. Is this the surprise you've prepared for me? Huh? Seeing that Ting didn't understand, Tongning shook her head. It's fine, I'll go get changed. Go ahead. Ting did not say a word, nor did he tell Tongning where they were going after they got off the plane. Tongning was completely unprepared as she followed behind Ting. After boarding the plane, she had no idea where they were going. It wasn't until she stood in front of the building that she realized what was happening. This was the place where she stepped onto the international runway for the first time as a model, the place where she took off. At the time, she was only in her early 20s. Why you here? To watch the show, Ting replied before he led her into the runway. Ting asked as he led her into the runway. I've booked the entire venue and prepared a set of clothes for you. I want to see you walk again. But I've already forgotten how to walk. It's a natural thing, how could I forget? Ting said as he turned around and led her backstage to hand her over to the long-awaited fashion designer. Mrs. I've been waiting for you. Tongning had no idea what Ting was planning. She instinctively allowed the designer to take her measurements. Afterwards, the designer disappeared from the backstage. It seemed she was going to tweak the measurements. A few minutes later, she reappeared with a set of clothes. With one glance, Tongning was stunned by the clothes. Because, to Tongning, it wasn't just a set of clothes. It was the battle robe that she had worn many years ago. The silver fishtail dress that shone brightly belonged to the supermodel from many years ago. Shall we put it on? The designer asked. I'm sure, even after many years, you will still look beautiful in this dress. Can you believe it? This dress is the same dress that you wore many years ago. Tongning was surprised by the designer's words. President Mo searched for it for a long time before he found it. More than 10 years? Tongning suddenly couldn't remember. But she felt like she had suddenly returned to her younger self. Are you ready? Let's go on stage. Dressed in a long dress, Tongning's supermodel aura once again returned to her body. She simply nodded her head. Just like the time when she was young and inexperienced, she used her steps to conquer the audience. But this time, Ting was the only one in the entire venue. Ting looked at her from afar. He imagined she was still the same young and inexperienced girl. He imagined she once carried hope onto the stage. As the music began to play, Tongning's confidence soared. Afterwards, her pose was exactly the same as it was many years ago. Not long after, Ting stood up and walked onto the runway. He wrapped his arms around Tongning tightly, not leaving a single gap between them. Why did you arrange it like this? I wanted to see what you looked like before you met me. Ting replied gently. I wanted to see how beautiful you looked when you first stepped onto the international stage. That was nothing. Because after I met you, I finally found the real me. Tongning kissed him as the couple stood on the runway affectionately. In the past, I always wanted to be worthy of you, so I worked hard and risked my life. Over the years, I kept asking myself if I was worthy of you. Afterwards, Enchanting gave her an affirmative answer. Of course, you are my queen. Chapter 1192. Recently, Qianlan had been set up on a blind date by a colleague. Her partner was a middle school physics teacher from the building next door. He was a young man in his early 20s called Enchanting. Enchanting was taller than a model and had a face that was more exquisite than a celebrity. But everyone said that he came from a poor family. Otherwise, why would he always wear a black suit and a pair of unassuming black-rimmed glasses? Qianlan had met this man before. He was indeed handsome, but his behavior was unappealing. But because of her colleague's matchmaking, she ended up meeting this man. To be honest, the first impression that she gave others was terrible. But Qianlan was surprisingly satisfied. His hands were delicate and pleasing to the eye, but he was the type of person that didn't talk much. Plus, he appeared to be very frugal. Qianlan was quite surprised that a man his age would be frugal. Miss Qian, you are the first person that has sat next to me for 5 minutes without saying a word without leaving angrily, Enchanting laughed. His facial features were so exquisite that they could be described as perfect. You are also the first man that I know that is so frugal in his early 20s, Qianlan laughed. Hello, I am Enchanting, a middle school physics teacher. My name is Qianlan. I am an English teacher at the primary school. Afterwards, the couple fell silent again. But this silence wasn't awkward. After all, Qianlan was famous for being a weirdo. She didn't like flashy men and especially disliked men that boasted about themselves. But Enchanting didn't give off the impression that he was greasy at all. In fact, he gave off a cold and aloof vibe, like he was trying to make people feel like he didn't exist. Qianlan liked to keep a low profile like this. I'm not sure. Will we have a chance to meet up again? Qianlan asked. Sure. I'm always free when I don't have class. The two men's first meeting was so dull that it made them want to sleep. Because, after Enchanting left, Enchanting's friend, who had been observing them from the shadows, yawned as she approached Qianlan and said, "This man is too boring. Forget it, we'll introduce you to someone else. It's such a waste of good looks." No, I'm interested in him. Qianlan laughed. What? Her friend yelled in surprise. Qianlan, is there something wrong with your brain? I'm not begging you to find a tall, rich, and handsome man, but at least a normal person, right? Look at Enchanting. From the beginning to the end, he's been acting like a weirdo. What do you like about him? You have to think this through, my dear mayor's daughter. Although you didn't rely on your family's connections, you can't be so poor. Look at your sister. She married a PhD from MIT and is now opening a research institute. Are you going to lose to her? There are many high-quality resources in the school. It's just that you didn't reveal your identity. Otherwise, a lot of men would come to you. Qianlan pushed her friend's hand away and smiled. As long as I like it, then that's enough. Who cares what others say? I really don't understand you. Well, since you like it, I'll get his number for you. You don't have to thank me. Just like that, Qianlan received Enchanting's phone number. But she did not dare to contact him because she was afraid that he would feel offended. She was, after all, woman. Sometimes she didn't want to take the initiative. After returning home, a maid approached her and asked, "Second miss, the big miss and madam are waiting for you." Okay. Qianlan changed into slippers, walked over to the dining table and sat down at her seat. Qianlan, your father has found a few young and handsome men for you. When will you meet them? Mother Qian asked with a smile. Mom, I want to find them myself. It's not that I don't trust your taste. Look at your sister, she's found such a good husband. Your father and I are counting on someone to take care of our little princess. Qianlan smiled awkwardly and did not say a word. She did not even look at her sister. Soon, her so-called brother-in-law came downstairs. Qianlan timidly greeted him as her brother-in-law before she left the dining table. This child is getting more and more impolite. Mom, it's fine, the man comforted Mother Qian before he sat down beside his wife. This man was called Chuanhao. He used to be Qianlan Sr. and they had a relationship for 2 years. But Su Chuanhao ended up going overseas, and when he returned, he was her brother-in-law. From that moment onwards, Qianlan no longer had any expectations for men. She liked men that were down-to-earth and low-profile, like Mo Zichen. It seemed, Su Chuanhao felt that her sister was more mature and successful than her. That night, Su Chuanhao knocked on Qianlan's door and entered her room. He looked at her and said earnestly, "I'm doing this for your own good. I hope you can interact with more good men. If I find a good man, I'm sure brother-in-law will feel bad." Qianlan laughed. "If there's nothing else, brother-in-law can leave. I still need to prepare for class." Su Chuanhao had no choice but to leave Qianlan's room. The reason why Qianlan's sister wasn't jealous was because she knew that Su Chuanhao went to Qianlan's room to show off. Qianlan would never find a better husband than Su Chuanhao. At that moment, Qianlan suddenly had the urge to send him a message. She pulled out her phone and hesitated for a long time before she finally sent him a message. It was a simple message. "This is Qianlan. Are you asleep?" When Mo Zichen received this message, he was having dinner at home. His brother had just returned home from the military. Mo Zishi had enrolled in a military university and was currently training at the military base. "Zichen, you sure know how to create trouble. Hai Rue is so big, yet you're not going to help your father out. You're just a young master of a noble family, yet you're a teacher." Compared to Mo Zichen's tall and slender body, Mo Zishi was a lot more muscular. He had tanned from working at the military base and looked unusually healthy. "Big brother, brother two, stop chatting. Come in and help mommy with the groceries," Mo Zian yelled from the kitchen. Coming, Mo Zishi chuckled as he turned around and headed into the kitchen. How long had it been since he'd been home? Mo Zichen wasn't sure either. It had been about 5 years. Seeing his parents as elegant as ever, Mo Zichen felt like he had only been away for 5 days. Mo Ting was still the same, elegant and imposing. He was great at everything, but he hated it when the 3 siblings created too much trouble for Tongning. After all, he was known to be a wife's slave. On the other hand, Tongning was still the same. Her long legs were still as beautiful as before. "Zichen, it's about time for you to come home," Tongning said to Mo Zichen. Mo Zichen had always been smarter than most people from a young age. As a result, he had his own opinions. Many years ago, he left home to experience life on his own. But no one knew that he was the son of the big boss of the entertainment industry and the mother of science, Tongning. Chapter 1193. Mo Zichen did not say a word. He simply hugged Tongning. "Mommy, I miss you a lot. If you miss me, then come back to visit me and your father often," Tongning instructed. "If I don't see you all year round, how am I supposed to feel at ease? From now on, report to your mother once a month," Mo Ting ordered. "Okay, Dad. Brother two, you're so useless. Why are you so obsessed with being a physics teacher?" Mo Zian had inherited her parents' good genes. Not only was she pretty, she also had long legs. "I think a normal life like that is quite good," Mo Zichen replied. "Plus, I've been thinking about getting a girlfriend lately. When the time comes, I'll bring her home for you guys to see." "Brother two, let me tell you, there aren't many people in Beijing that are compatible with a family like ours," Mo Zian humphed. "If you want to be my sister-in-law, you'll need our entire family's approval." "You're smart," Mo Zichen laughed as he patted Mo Zian on the head. "Brother two, you're the smartest. Look at me, I never ask big brother for help. He'll just use his fists. But you're different. You need to protect me," Mo Zian said as she placed her head on Mo Zichen's shoulder. "Okay. By the way, don't you want Sister Kai? Sister Kai likes you the most." The Sister Kai that Mo Zian mentioned was the old little eggshell, Nangong Kai. After all these years, she had always liked the 2 brothers, but Mo Zichen had always avoided her. Firstly, he didn't like them, and secondly, he knew that Mo Zishi and Big Brother both liked Nangong Kai. He didn't want to compete with Big Brother. If I get a chance in the future, I'll bring my girlfriend home so you can meet her. What do you mean by if I get a chance? That's a must. Mo Zichen had mixed feelings during the meal. But a moment later, he received a phone call. As soon as Mo Zian saw him pull out his phone, she scoffed, "Why are you so busy as a teacher these days?" "Dad, Mom, that's enough, you guys eat. I'll walk him out," Tongning said as she stood up and walked Mo Zichen to the front door. Seeing how the tiny tot from before had grown up, Tongning sighed. "Zichen, others may not know, but you can't hide it from Mom. Mommy won't ask about your real identity, but you must promise me to be careful. My son can't be lost for no reason." Mo Zichen did not say a word. He simply hugged his mother. "I know, Mommy. A man's ambition is to travel the world." Tongning had said a long time ago that she wasn't going to force the kids to choose a career or choose a partner. As long as they felt comfortable, it was fine. But Mo Zichen. Thinking of this, she let out a sigh. Mo Zichen had always been smart and quick-witted since he was young. She didn't believe that Mo Zichen would waste his talent and become a physics teacher. As expected, after leaving Hyatt Regency, Mo Zichen took off his glasses, rode his motorcycle from his apartment and headed straight for the meeting place. Being a physics teacher was just a cover. His real identity was a spy from the National Security Agency. Because he was too smart, he was recruited into the state security when he was still in university. He worked as a logistics officer and then as an intelligence officer. Physics teacher was just a cover for his identity. It made it easier for him to go out and do field work at any times. The mission that he received today was to determine if a professor from a certain university was doing sensitive work that could threaten national security. The entire family had no idea that he worked for the National Security Agency because he had signed a confidentiality agreement. But how could someone as sensitive as Tongning not notice that her son was hiding something? The Mo Zichen that was on a mission was a completely different person. He wore a leather jacket and rode a motorcycle, looking extremely manly. But when it came to fighting skills, even Mo Zishi from a military school was no match for him. After all, he was too smart. After completing his mission, he returned to his apartment to get changed and returned to school. Everything was perfect. At this time, he finally saw the message that Qianlan had sent him. As an intelligence officer, he had many identities and a lot of skills that allowed him to trace back 18 generations of Qianlan's family. But he did not do so. Perhaps it was because he felt like there was a mystery around Qianlan that he couldn't understand. So he simply replied, "I'm asleep." "How did you reply to messages when you were asleep?" Qianlan couldn't help but laugh. "There's a movie tomorrow night. Are you free? I've looked at your schedule, you don't have any classes." As you said, I don't have any classes. So, I'll leave it up to you." How could two rather boring people find each other interesting? This was also a very strange experience. The next night, Mo Zichen did not wear a black suit. Instead, he wore a brown jacket. This made Qianlan feel extremely mesmerized by him. "It's a shame that you're not a model." Mo Ting and Tongning had strong genes, so Mo Zichen naturally inherited their good tradition. "But I have a feeling that you look a lot like a famous person." "Is that so?" Mo Zichen replied vaguely. He was simply a Terminator. But Qianlan did not look down on him. She simply smiled. "Do you like to watch detective films?" "They're not bad," Mo Zichen replied. "I've seen a few. But they were all nonsense." "That's good. I was just worried that you wouldn't like them." Qianlan gave in to Mo Zichen's feelings. Mo Zichen smiled and shook his head. Like this, the two women entered the theater side by side and sat peacefully together. From time to time, Qianlan would turn her head to look at Mo Zichen. Mo Zichen's side profile was even more charming than his front profile. "You seem to be cold and indifferent all the time. You seem to be very restrained in everything." "Perhaps it's because I'm not used to interacting with the opposite sex," Mo Zichen explained. "Do you think I'm boring?" Actually, I'm also a boring person, Mo Zichen replied. The students love my classes, but they don't like to listen to me. All they like to do is stare at me. That's because you're good-looking. Qianlan couldn't help but laugh. She could feel Mo Zichen's cute side. Let's keep in touch from now on. I actually quite like you as a friend. It's rare for someone to like me. Mo Zichen was speaking the truth. Because of his job as a secret, he didn't have much contact with others. As a result, he was cold towards everything, so he didn't have any friends. Was Qianlan an exception? For some reason, he didn't dislike Qianlan. It was a strange feeling. A smart person's brain was useful and a smart person's eyes were naturally unique. This was something that he never doubted himself. Chapter 1194. Because someone was going on a date, Qianlan started to dress up more than before. This small change caught the attention of her family. So, Mother Qian couldn't help but ask her daughter, is Qianlan dating someone? She's been putting on makeup recently. Mom, I'm not sure, Qianlan's sister shook her head. You need to take care of your sister and keep an eye on her. With a family like ours, what if she marries a poor man? Mother Qian instructed. Okay, Mom, I'll keep an eye on Qianlan. Qianhui, I don't want anything else. I just hope that Qianlan can find a good man. That way, even if your father and I go to hell right now, we can rest in peace. Qianhui smiled and comforted her mother. Mom, don't worry, Qianlan will definitely find her happiness. Secretly follow her a few times. If the other party is too bad, immediately make a move. You can't let them develop a deep relationship. Qianhui was helpless. She couldn't stand her mother's nagging. I know what to do. Previously, when Qianlan gave up her job and insisted on becoming a teacher, her family was against it. But it was just a job, so it didn't matter if she did it or not. But when it came to life, it wasn't up to her to decide. Qianlan had no idea that her family was watching her every move. But she was certain that the type of man she liked was Mo Zichen. Although Qianlan grew up in an official's household, she was a mature person. Plus, she had always been assertive and knew what she wanted and what she rejected. So, she didn't want to miss out on Mo Zichen. Whether it was her life or her partner, as long as she came across something she wanted, she was going to give it a try. Of course, if Mo Zichen didn't like her, it would be a different story. As they were both teachers, their time was limited. Plus, there was a cinema near the school. So, Qianlan used this as an excuse to invite Mo Zichen out. Although it was a lame excuse, Mo Zichen patiently agreed. The couple agreed to watch a second screening after work. But Qianlan had no idea that the Qian family had already sent someone to follow her. Mo Zichen knew from the start that the person's tracking skills weren't even as good as the paparazzi, so it was obvious how amateurish they were. However, Mo Zichen pretended not to know. There haven't been any good movies recently, but this one is really popular, so I bought the tickets, Qianlan said as she handed the tickets to Mo Zichen. As soon as Mo Zichen saw the name of the film, he couldn't help but laugh. A production of Hai Rui. Last time, I saw that you didn't seem to like detective type, so this time, let's watch sci-fi. Alright. Mo Zichen didn't bat an eyelid from the beginning to the end, or it could be said that this was his professional ethics as an intelligence officer. Do you have any special hobbies after work? For example, sports? Or reading books? I like to sleep. He went to class during the day and carried out missions at night. He was already very tired, so whenever he had some free time, he would choose to catch up on sleep. It's fine, I'm quite a boring person too, Qianlan laughed. From an outsider's point of view, no matter how they looked at it, there wouldn't be any sparks between the two. But Qianlan wanted to try it out with Mo Zichen. The film is about to start. Let's go in, Mo Zichen suggested. He was a little annoyed by the guy that was secretly taking photos of them. Qianlan nodded her head and carried a bag of popcorn into the theater with Mo Zichen. They then sat down in the theater. At this time, the person that was secretly taking photos of Qianlan had already delivered them to Qianhui. As soon as Qian Hui saw Mo Zichen, she immediately furrowed her brows. This guy looks good, but he definitely doesn't come from a good family. One look and you can tell that he's a gigolo. So, she immediately sent someone to investigate Mo Zichen. But, apart from being a normal teacher, Mo Zichen's parents were all unknown. In other words, Mo Zichen was a loser that didn't even have parents and was probably a shameful person. How could someone with a background like that be good enough for Qianlan? Because of this, Qian Hui obtained Mo Zichen's contact details from the school. Just like her mother said, before Qianlan and Mo Zichen developed any deep feelings for each other, it was time to nip this in the bud. Mo Zichen never expected that the person was from the Qian family and that they would personally come looking for him the next day. But by the time he and Qianlan finished watching the film, the person had already disappeared. Mr. Mo, you can call me Zichen, Mo Zichen replied. I wanted to ask you about your views on relationships. Qianlan's hint was obvious enough, but Mo Zichen did not respond immediately. Seeing this, Qianlan smiled awkwardly. I'm sorry, I was too impatient. No, you're quite cute like this, Mo Zichen laughed. I don't have much of an opinion on relationships. Everything depends on fate. Hai Rui's film was really good. Thank you for today. Let's meet again another day. Mo Zichen did not show any obvious intentions, but he did not reject her goodwill either. But Qianlan reflected on herself and wondered if she had been too proactive. I'll take you home. No need, my home is nearby, Qianlan rejected. You must be tired from the day. Go home and get some rest. Okay, send me a message when you get home, Mo Zichen did not insist. He seemed to treat everyone like a gentleman, as if he was deliberately keeping his distance. Qianlan was a little disappointed, but she did not show it on her face. She was afraid that her family would see this an object. Afterwards, the couple returned home. But, after Mo Zichen changed his clothes, he disappeared into the night sky. He had no choice but to act on instinct. Because of this, his friend laughed at him. After joining this stupid organization, you can't even tell the truth when you're flirting with a girl. You must be tired. If you don't like her, you should have just rejected her. Why do you have to be so indifferent? If it was someone else, they would have been scared off a long time ago. But this time, it's different, Mo Zichen shrugged. Fuck, it turns out that there are actually people in this world that like your boredom. Don't say that. I'm actually a man of character, Mo Zichen said before he put on a pair of black gloves. Qianlan had a feeling that Mo Zichen didn't like her, but Mo Zichen did not make it clear. This made her quite frustrated. By the time she returned home, her family was already asleep, so Qianlan didn't have to explain herself. But she had no idea that her family already knew that she was in contact with a poor rascal. Chapter 1195. The next day, while Qianlan had class and Mo Zichen didn't, Qian Hui sent someone to invite Mo Zichen outside. To highlight her identity, Qian Hui deliberately dressed herself up so that Mo Zichen would back off when he found out about her identity. Mo Zichen thought about the stalking from yesterday. The moment he saw Qian Hui, he understood her intentions. Mr. Please sit. Qian Hui gestured to Mo Zichen with her chin as she removed her sunglasses and placed them on the table. My name is Qian Hui, I'm Qianlan's sister. Hello, Miss Qian. Mo Zichen sat down across from her. I asked you out because I found out that you and my sister have been interacting closely recently. So, I wanted to ask Mr. Mo how far your relationship has progressed. This seems to be a personal question of mine, right? Mo Zichen replied with a smile. Let me put it this way, no matter how far you've progressed, please stop immediately because my sister Qianlan doesn't come from an ordinary background. I'm sure Mr. Mo understands what I'm trying to say. After Qian Hui finished speaking, she took out an envelope from her purse. This is a small gift from me. I hope you can accept it to make up for my rashness today. Mo Zichen looked at the envelope on the table and couldn't help but laugh. Miss Qian sure is generous. But I don't really need it. You think it's too little? I don't like people interfering in my private affairs. Miss Chen, please leave. Mo Zichen directly expressed his attitude. Mr. Mo, did you already know about Qian Lan's identity? Is that why you're approaching me with ulterior motives? I don't know what throne your Qian family has, but I really don't like people interfering in my private affairs. Today, even if it wasn't you or someone else, I would still say the same thing. Mo Zichen couldn't help but laugh. To prevent him from getting close to Qianlan, the Qian family actually thought of using money to solve the problem. Qian Hui returned in disappointment. She originally thought she could get rid of this poor man with a simple gesture. But, it seemed, he had his eyes on Qianlan's identity and wanted to climb up the social ladder. How could Qianlan fall for a man like this? He doesn't know when to advance or retreat. Qianlan had no idea that Qian Hui had looked for Mo Zichen. Meanwhile, Mo Zichen simply treated it as a joke and did not mention it to Qianlan. However, when he was on a mission that night, he was once again mocked by his colleagues. Haha, think about our young master Mo, the beloved son of Tongning and Mo Ting. His family is as rich as a country, yet someone threw money at his face. Ha! I'll make you laugh to death. Mo Zichen said helplessly. You should have thrown $1 million check back. Are you kidding me? Our young master Mo may lack everything but money. That family doesn't know your identity. If they did, their eyes would probably pop out of their sockets. It doesn't matter. Mo Zichen didn't care at all. Don't you want to know what the Qian family does? What else can we do? I didn't think about it before, but when Qian Hui came to look for me today, I realized it. You and I both know what the surname of the new leader is. Mo Zichen replied indifferently, even so, I still have the same attitude. No one can interfere with my private affairs. Where's your mother? Except for my mother. Mo Zichen replied firmly. Not only was Tongning Mo Ting's flesh and blood, but she was also Mo Zichen's. To be honest, I don't think you and Qianlan are a good match. Forget it. Stop talking nonsense and get to work. Mo Zichen did not express too much about Qianlan's matter, so no one knew what he was thinking. That day, after class, Qianlan sent Mo Zichen a message, but he did not reply. Qianlan returned home, but to her surprise, she was greeted with a family meeting. Qianlan, come here, Mother Qian ordered in a strict tone. Mom? What's wrong? Today, I asked your sister to look for someone, but she came back disappointed, Mother Qian said. Who did she look for? You're the mayor's daughter. How could you like those poor men? Qian Hui turned and looked at Qianlan. Qianlan, would you be happy if your entire family was laughed at? After hearing this, Qianlan had a bad feeling. No wonder Mo Zichen did not respond to her message. It turned out her family had already looked for him. With this thought, Qianlan immediately exploded. I'm not related to him in any way. Why did you look for him? Of course we're making a stand. The Qian family can't possibly find a poor son-in-law, Qian Hui replied loudly. Qian Hui replied loudly, you have to understand that you are a member of the Qian clan. You have the responsibility to protect the Qian clan's reputation. Mom, do you think so too? Do you also think that my sister is right to interfere in my private affairs? Don't blame your sister. I asked her to do this, Mother Qian humphed. Qianlan, I've introduced you to so many talented young men. You should at least take a liking to one of them. Go look for a physics teacher. I'm really disappointed in you. Me too, Qianlan said in disbelief as she stormed out the door. She never imagined that her family would interfere in her private affairs, disrespect her life and humiliate Mo Zichen because of her. With this thought, Qianlan cried as she left. But she didn't know where to go. Perhaps she should apologize to Mo Zichen. If the Qian family did something like this, how could she have the face to ask Mo Zichen out for a meeting? So, Qianlan pulled out her phone and gave her friend a phone call. This was the friend that introduced her to Mo Zichen. Afterwards, she found Mo Zichen's address from her friend. Although she knew that it wasn't convenient to look for Mo Zichen like this, she felt that if she didn't explain things to him right now, she would feel terrible. Because of this, she went to Mo Zichen's home. But, After ringing the doorbell for a long time, Mo Zichin did not open the door. Was he not home? It was already so late. Where could he be? By the time Mo Zichin finished his mission, it was already 1 a.m. As he returned home, he noticed a person squatting on the steps. Mo Zichin took a closer look and realized it was Qianlan. Why are you waiting here? Mo Zichin immediately ran over and placed a jacket on Qianlan's body. Qianlan stood up and looked at Mo Zichin with a pained expression. I'm here to apologize on behalf of my family. You don't need to. It's not safe for a girl to be out at this late hour, Mo Zichin replied in an indifferent tone. But Mo Zichin's indifferent attitude made Qianlan feel bad. Don't you feel insulted at all? Your family is doing this for your own good. From their point of view, they're not wrong. What about from your point of view? Qianlan asked. Don't do something like this again. News of women being murdered is everywhere. You shouldn't be out on your own, Mo Zichin said in a slightly heavier tone. It doesn't matter to you, does it? Chapter 1196. Qianlan, you don't need to come all the way here to explain things to me. I'm not angry, Mo Zichin replied. Plus, family is indeed more important to me. You shouldn't get into a fight with your parents because of someone you don't know well. As soon as Mo Zichin said this, Qianlan felt even worse. Because every word that he said made it seem like he was a bystander. He never imagined that a woman like her had waited for so long because she was afraid that he would be angry. I understand, Qianlan mumbled. I'm glad you're not angry. I'm going to leave now. Thank you for the jacket. I'll walk you out. No need, Qianlan said before she left. After speaking, Qianlan quickly walked away. However, after taking 2 steps, she suddenly stopped and turned around to look at Mo Zichin. I originally thought that I would be different in your heart. But, in the end, I'm no different than anyone else. Sorry. Qianlan shook her head. There was nothing to apologize for. Some people were only found out after trying. She originally thought that because of their identities, she could close the gap between them. But, if Mo Zichin wasn't interested in her, then no matter how hard she tried, it would be a waste of effort. Forget it, stop embarrassing yourself. After the drama, Qianlan returned home to find Mother Qian waiting for her in the living room. Seeing that her daughter was in a daze, Mother Qian's heart ached. Lan Er, can't you stop your mother from worrying? What's so good about a poor kid like him? If you're going to interfere with everything in my life, then I might as well die. Qianlan couldn't stand the fact that her life was being controlled by her family. Mom, if you don't believe me, you can try me. After speaking, Qianlan rubbed her nose. You don't need to worry, I won't be seeing Mo Zichin anymore. Because he doesn't even like me. After speaking, Qianlan weakly returned to her room and collapsed onto her bed. She didn't understand why she was born into a family like this and why she had such controlling parents. All she wanted was a normal relationship and a normal life. The next day, Qianlan and Mo Zichin ran into each other in the school cafeteria. This was something that had never happened before. The two of them tacitly avoided each other's eyes and found a place to sit down and eat. Seeing the awkwardness between Qianlan and Mo Zichin's friend guessed the ending between the two. So, she picked up her tray and sat down opposite Qianlan comfortingly. I told you a long time ago that you guys don't walk the same path. Look at how awkward you've become. I still like him, but he doesn't like me, Qianlan replied. What did you say? You mean he dumped you? His friend was furious. This poor boy doesn't know what's good for him. Doesn't he know that he has missed out on the mayor's daughter? That's because you didn't know that my sister brought money to humiliate him, Qianlan sneered. No wonder. Mo Zichin's friend understood because his father-in-law's family was too aggressive. What do you plan to do now? You cried a lot last night, right? His eyes are still swollen. I don't know either. Qianlan shook her head. Perhaps I should believe in fate. I should listen to my parents, go on a blind date, get married and never return to that family again. Does that mean you've decided to give up on Mo Zichen? Qianlan looked at Mo Zichen from afar as her heart ached. But as long as Mo Zichen showed even the slightest bit of love, she would persist until the end. But she had no idea how difficult it was for Mo Zichen. As an intelligence officer, he had signed a confidentiality agreement that no one was allowed to reveal his identity. So, to Qianlan, he was like a partner that could disappear at any time. What was the point of having a partner like that? To make herself forget, Qianlan immersed herself in work. But, for some reason, after explaining things to Mo Zichen, she became more concerned about his movements. This was how the human heart worked. The more people disliked you, the more you wanted them. Meanwhile, Mo Zichen's life continued as usual. He attended classes during the day, carried out missions at night, and slept whenever he had free time. As for Qianlan's phone number, it had been a long time since he last contacted her. Perhaps she would soon forget about this unhappy time. A while later, Nangong Kai arrived at the university. Mo Zichen had just finished class. As soon as he saw a familiar face, he smiled. "Why did you suddenly come looking for me?" "I was passing by, so I dropped by." "Aren't you going to treat me to lunch?" Nangong Kai laughed. She was no longer the little eggshell from before. The Nangong Kai in front of him had grown into a natural and unrestrained person. "Let's go." Mo Zichen put away his textbooks and walked along the campus with Nangong Kai. "You disappeared for 5 years. Where have you been during that time?" "Can I not ask you anything?" Mo Zichen asked. "I don't want to talk about the past." "I know. I'm afraid no one can tell what you're thinking," Nangong Kai replied, even though there was a hint of disappointment in her eyes. The two chatted and laughed as they walked out of the school. But they soon became the topic of conversation for many of the teachers. After all, Mo Zichen didn't have a strong background. How did he know someone that was like an heiress? It was also around this time that Qianlan heard that Mo Zichen left the university with a long-legged beauty. For some reason, she couldn't help but feel a little jealous. It turned out Mo Zichen had better options even if he didn't accept her. Of course, she had only heard about them and never expected to actually meet them. After the two ate lunch, Nangong Kai sent Mo Zichen back to school. "Can I visit you more often from now on?" "As long as I'm here, you're welcome." Nangong Kai nodded her head in satisfaction and hugged Mo Zichen. "I miss you and your brother a lot. You can visit him at the military base." Mo Zichen simply stood there without moving and did not respond. But Nangong Kai was already used to it. Plus, she knew that Mo Zichen didn't have any romantic feelings for her. Qianlan went to the secondary school to get some information and bumped into Mo Zichen and Nangong Kai together. The two looked very close, like they had known each other for a long time. This made Qianlan feel hurt. But Nangong Kai immediately noticed her unusual gaze. "So," she laughed, "are you related to that female teacher?" Mo Zichen laughed. "Did you notice? It's written all over your face." "What? Did you make her sad?" Nangong Kai asked in amusement. Chapter 1197. After hearing this, Mo Zichen said to Nangong Kai, "Sister Kai, in my heart, I've always treated you as my sister. No matter what, I'll always make my stand clear. I know. I just think that if you really like her, you shouldn't make her sad. I'm sad, but I'll only be satisfied if someone is happy," Nangong Kai said to Mo Zichen. "All right, you still have class in the afternoon, so I'll be leaving first." Mo Zichen nodded his head, but he still felt a little strange seeing Qianlan in front of him. Tonight he was on a mission alone, so it took him a long time to get home. It wasn't until 3 a.m. that he finally returned home. But he saw the same person waiting for him at the same place. "You're back?" Qianlan looked at Mo Zichen and smiled. "I don't know why, but I feel like you're different during the day and at night." As Mo Zichen approached Qianlan, he immediately smelled the pungent smell of alcohol. So, his expression immediately turned sour. This woman is a little too brave. How dare she drink and sit here on her own? No one dares to come near me. I brought pepper spray with me, Qianlong said in a daze. Mo Zichen had no choice but to help her home. He then took her into the bathroom and helped her wash her face. Are you awake? After being stimulated by the cold water, Qianlan's mind cleared up. When she realized she was sitting on the edge of the bathtub, her face turned red and she felt embarrassed. I'm sorry, I've embarrassed myself in front of you. You're probably sick of me. You drown your sorrows in alcohol when you're heartbroken, and you even came to the man's house. After speaking, Qianlong stood up and held onto the wall to leave. But she accidentally tripped on the carpet and fell to the ground. Mo Zichen tried to help her up, but she refused. I just feel like I'm a failure. I can't control my own life. Mo Zichen knew that Qianlong was a girl that wanted to live a normal life. She didn't like her parents interfering with her life. You must think I'm terrible? Mo Zichen did not say a word because he didn't know what to say. Qianlong couldn't hold it in any longer, so she burst into tears. Even if she was in a sorry state, she had to accept it. Mo Zichen looked at the kind-hearted girl from behind and couldn't help but stroke her head from behind. It's different? Huh? Qianlong didn't know how to react. Understand it yourself. After speaking, Mo Zichen helped her sit on the sofa in the living room. Qianlong tried her best to understand what Mo Zichen meant. But, because of the alcohol, her brain was a little muddled, so she couldn't remember. This is my first time drinking. I should be able to recall it. Wait, Mo Zichen couldn't help but laugh. But by the time he retrieved a blanket from the bedroom, Qianlong had already fallen asleep on the sofa. Mo Zichen didn't move her anymore. Instead, he gave her another pillow so that she could sleep comfortably on the sofa. Apart from her background, Qianlong was very ordinary in every other aspect. She was so ordinary that even a random actress in the entertainment industry would be better than her. However, it was this ordinariness that made Mo Zichen feel at ease. Perhaps it was because as an intelligence officer, what he hoped for the most was such an ordinary life. He was very restrained, especially when it came to relationships. Even when it came to his family, he was willing to not appear in front of them for 5 years so that Tongning wouldn't worry about him. He didn't want to hurt anyone because, as an intelligence officer, he didn't have the right to be ordinary. But now that he had met her, what could he do? As Mo Zichen looked down at Qianlong sleeping on the sofa, he couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. The next morning, Qianlong woke up at Mo Zichen's home. If she was 70% clear-headed the previous night, then as she thought back to what happened, her face began to burn. You're awake? Go wash up, it's time for breakfast. As Qianlong looked at Mo Zichen, who was holding a piece of toast, she suddenly remembered that Mo Zichen seemed to have said something important the night before. But she couldn't remember a single word. So, as soon as they sat down at the dining table, she asked Mo Zichen, Did you say something important to me last night? Last night, I said it's different, Mo Zichen repeated patiently. After hearing this, Qianlong finally understood what Mo Zichen meant. After all, she had previously said something to Mo Zichen. I originally thought that I would be different in your heart. But, in the end, I'm no different than anyone else. So, did Mo Zichen's reply mean that he was giving her an answer? Then, Mo Zichen put down the glass of milk in his hand, adjusted his glasses and said to Qianlong, Qianlong, the last time you came looking for me, what time did I return home? Around 1 a.m. What about last night? Mo Zichen asked. Around 3 a.m. So, don't you have any questions? Qianlong shook her head. She was curious, but she was certain that Mo Zichen didn't go to a nightclub, nor did he look like he was looking for a woman. After all, his scent was the answer. There was no trace of impurity on his body. I won't say anything because I have nothing to say. But, I need to tell you that this situation will continue for a long time. What are you going to do? Mo Zichen asked. Do you have a special reason? Qianlong guessed. If that's the case, you don't need to say anything. I won't mind. If you accept this, I think, we can try being together, Mo Zichen said confidently. Really? Yes. In case some drunkard barges into my home again, Mo Zichen said before he handed the glass of milk to Qianlan. Don't worry about my parents. Even if I have to risk my life, I won't listen to their arrangements. I will only choose what I want. Actually, there's no need to argue with your parents, Mo Zichen said with a hidden meaning. Are you trying to say that family is more important than a partner? What I want to say is that family and partner don't have to be opposing. I will make sure your parents are satisfied with me. How are you going to do that? Qianlan was curious. Was he going to change his background? Hurry and go to class after breakfast. By the way, you didn't come home last night. Aren't you afraid that your family will be worried? Mo Zichen reminded. Give your mother a phone call. No matter how angry she is still your mother. Okay, Qianlan nodded. However, she was still thinking about how to communicate with her family. She truly liked Mo Zichen. No matter what his background was, she would accept it. Her sister was already married to a big shot, so was there a need to make things difficult for her? Meanwhile, Mo Zichen looked at Qianlan's hesitation and couldn't help but laugh. This silly woman. Chapter 1198. Qianlan didn't return home that night. She planned to return to school first before returning home to explain herself. But as soon as she returned, the principal was waiting for her. The principal was sitting in front of her desk. As soon as he saw her, he said to her, Qianlan, pack your things and go home. Principal? Qianlan furrowed her brows. She didn't understand what was happening. Aya, look, I didn't know you were the mayor's second miss either. I apologize for offending you in the past. After hearing the principal's words, Qianlan finally understood what he meant. It seemed the Chen family had already come over to greet her. Principal, actually, go ahead, don't make things difficult for us. The principal waved his hand, gesturing for Qianlan to stop resisting. The Chen family had already arrived and explained everything. It seemed, as the second miss, she wouldn't be able to stay at school anymore. Qianlan was furious, but she couldn't pressure the principal any further. So, she had no choice but to pack her luggage and leave. She had only been gone for one night, yet the Chen family reacted in such a way. So, what if she was determined to follow Mo Zichen? Qianlan carried her luggage home angrily. But as soon as she arrived home, she found Mother Qian sitting on the sofa watching TV. You're back? Mom, what happened at school? Qianlan asked as she put down her luggage. You didn't return home last night. Did you fool around with that rascal who teaches physics? Mother Qian turned and looked at Qianlan. Since you won't learn your lesson, then I'll have to help you cut through the mess. After hearing this, Qianlan went crazy. In that case, I won't be your daughter anymore, is that okay? Qianlan threw her luggage aside. Just pretend you don't have a daughter like me. I don't want to return to the Qian family anymore. What are you talking about? Mom, I'm warning you one last time. If you continue to disrespect my life, I don't know what I'll do. After speaking, Qianlan turned around and ran out of the Qian family home without looking back. Mother Qian took a deep breath. She felt like her daughter was too immature. Parents always made plans for their children, so why didn't Qianlan understand their efforts? Just like that, Qianlan ran out and didn't know where to go, so she simply wandered around the streets. Back at school, Mo Zichen quickly found out about the incident and immediately gave Qianlan a phone call. But Qianlan's phone had run out of battery last night and she hadn't recharged it this morning. Because of this, Mo Zichen immediately drove out of the school after his physics lesson. He had a feeling that Qianlan would be there. Meanwhile, Su Chuanhao headed out to look for Qianlan. He had been upstairs when Qianlan and Mother Qian were arguing, so he waited until Mother Qian returned to her room before heading out to look for her. Luckily, Qianlan wasn't too far away. Qianlan, get in the car. Su Chuanhao drove over and stopped the car in front of Qianlan. I'll take you home. Qianlan looked at Su Chuanhao and shook her head. Brother-in-law, you shouldn't be getting involved in my matters. I just don't want you to quarrel with your family. Sorry, you're too nosy. After speaking, Qianlong continued to drive forward. At this time, Mo Zichen's car arrived nearby and honked at Qianlong. As soon as Qianlong realized it was Mo Zichen, she immediately crossed the road and opened the passenger seat door. Let's go. Su Chuanhao watched as Qianlong left with Mo Zichen, but there was nothing he could do. At this time, Mo Zichen also saw Su Chuanhao. What happened? Mo Zichen asked on the way home. Did you get expelled from school? My mother did it. She doesn't want to see us together, Qianlong replied straightforwardly. But I don't want that family anymore. Zichen, can you take me away from here? But blood ties can't be severed. Let me take you home. I don't want to. I can't kidnap someone else's daughter and run away from home, Mo Zichen said. Trust me, I can convince your parents. But how? Qianlong was on the verge of breaking down. Did you know that my parents want you to be a good match? I don't want you to be humiliated by them, who said we're not of the same family? Mo Zichen suddenly laughed as he sped up the car. But I don't want to see my mother right now. In that case, let's go see your father, Mo Zichen replied. Give me the address, forget it, I can find it. Are you serious? Could he be more serious than this? Mo Zichen couldn't help but laugh. Did you think I'd allow the girl I like to break up with her family because of me? I'm a person that prioritizes family. I don't want you to fall out with your family. But Mo Zichen did not say much to Qianlong as he directly led her to the city council's office. He then told the staff that he wanted to see Father Qian. Luckily, it was almost lunchtime. After Father Qian finished his work, he saw the couple at the door. Let's go. The three men walked into a nearby tea house while Qianlong kept her head down the entire time. At least you know how to come home. Father Qian humphed. So, Uncle, I'm Mo Zichen. I've heard a little about you, but I never expected you to be so brave. You actually brought my daughter here to look for me, Father Qian said as he adjusted his suit. You almost stole my daughter away from me. Uncle, I'm sorry. I know that you're worried about Qianlan's friends. I understand how you feel. Since you understand, then why did you? Dad, don't be so harsh. Qianlong immediately defended Mo Zichen. However, Mo Zichen did not get angry. Instead, he smiled and said, I'm sorry, Uncle. I've offended you. I will definitely treat you to a meal on another day. Umph. With your permission, Uncle, I would like to take Qianlong to Hyatt Regency for dinner tonight. As soon as Father Qian heard this, his first reaction was that this rascal was too brave. How dare he make such a request at a time like this? But when he heard the words Hyatt Regency, he furrowed his brows. After all, everyone knew that the houses on that piece of land were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Hyatt Regency? I'm sorry, Uncle. I didn't make myself clear. Mo Ting is my father and Tong Ning is my mother, Mo Zichen explained in a gentlemanly manner. Who in Beijing hadn't heard of these two names? Father Qian never imagined that Mo Zichen was the child of these two people. Even Qianlong was shocked. I'll explain it to you in detail later, Mo Zichen whispered to Qianlong. Chapter 1199. Since you're their son, why didn't you reveal your identity from the start? Plus, if you're their son, why are you teaching physics at that lousy school? Father Qian was still suspicious of Mo Zichen's identity. Qianlong is at the school and no one knows about her identity. I'm afraid of the same thing, Mo Zichen replied smoothly. As for why I teach physics, it's because my father wants my brother and I to gain more experience in society. That's why my brother is in the army and I'm teaching. In reality, based on Mo Zichen's patient attitude, it was obvious that his upbringing wasn't something an ordinary person could compare to. This left Father Qian speechless. Qianlong is my precious daughter. I don't want her to suffer. Although she feels that I'm restricting her, she needs to understand how dangerous her father's position is. It's not that I despise someone else's background, I'm simply afraid that if I step down from my position one day, my son-in-law will be able to protect my daughter from harm. That's enough. Since you've already explained everything to me, I have no reason to object. You guys can decide for yourselves. I still need to go to work. After speaking, Father Qian stood up, looked at his watch and hurried back to his office. Afterwards, Qianlong looked at Emo Zichen like she didn't know him. I thought you were just a normal physics teacher? From now on, I'll just be a normal physics teacher. I feel ashamed that I dragged my parents into this. If I want a girlfriend, I still need to use my family background. Emo Zichen shook his head helplessly. So, the beauty that came to look for you yesterday, she's an older sister that I grew up with. She dropped by to see me, Emo Zichen explained. All of a sudden, everything feels a little surreal, Qianlong said as she looked at Emo Zichen. Will you eventually enter the entertainment industry and become a celebrity? I won't. I'm destined to be a normal physics teacher for the rest of my life. I like living a normal life. After saying this, Emo Zichen ran his hand through Qianlong's hair. Will you continue to like me? Qianlong looked into Emo Zichen's eyes and nodded her head. She felt that only Emo Zichen could understand what she was thinking. She felt that they were the same kind of people. I've already spoken to the principal. You can come back and continue your lessons. In the future, no one will interfere with what you do. What if our mothers showed a strong desire to control both of us? I seem to be very good at dealing with old people. Do you want to try? Emo Zichen winked at her. Let's go back to school. Don't wander around, I'll be worried. Also, don't drink so much, I understand. After that, the two of them returned to school. As for Mother Qian, no one had told her yet. When Su Chuanhao found out that he couldn't bring Qianlong home, his heart was in pain. He couldn't deny that Qianlong still had a place in his heart, but he had already married her sister. Especially since Qianlong liked a poor kid like him. What kind of happiness could she possibly have if she followed him? When Su Chuanhao returned home, he ran into Qian Hui in the living room. Where have you been? I went to look for Qianlong. Mom got into an argument with her this morning. Chuanhao, don't you think you're being a bit too much of a busybody? Qian Hui yelled at Su Chuanhao. Qian Hui, what do you mean by this? Mother Qian noticed the hidden meaning behind the couple's words, so she asked. Chuanhao is concerned about his sister-in-law. What's wrong with that? Mom, there are some things that you don't know. I don't know, but I'll know if you tell me, Mother Qian replied. From what you're saying, do you think there's something going on between Chuanhao and Qianlong? I didn't say anything. I'm going back to my room. Qian Hui held back her anger and did not reveal the truth. She held back her tears as she turned around and returned to her room. Meanwhile, Su Chuanhao couldn't take it anymore because of Qian Hui's temper. The person that asked him to take care of Qianlong was Qian Hui. So, the person that was questioning him was also Qian Hui. Chuanhao, why didn't you bring Qianlong home? She boarded a man's car, Su Chuanhao replied. The two of them seem to be very close. Why is that poor man still clinging to my daughter? As soon as Mother Qian heard this, her heart exploded. No, I'm going to the university to look for that man. Let me go. After all, we're both men. It'll be easier for us to talk, Su Chuanhao suggested. I also care about Qianlong. I don't want her to go down the wrong path. Okay, go ahead. Mother Qian had no idea that Su Chuanhao and Qianlong had a past relationship. After hearing this, Su Chuanhao looked upstairs. It was obvious that he was afraid that Qian Hui would be angry. Mother Qian understood what Su Chuanhao meant, so she waved her hand. Go ahead. I'll go comfort Qian Hui. Thank you, Mom. After speaking, Su Chuanhao grabbed his car keys and left the house. He was definitely going to teach Emo Zichen a lesson today. He thought that because he was a PhD student at MIT, he had the right to teach a mere physics teacher a lesson. But he had no idea that Emo Zichen had a shocking background and frightening educational background. At this time, Mother Qian went upstairs to comfort her daughter. Qian Hui, what's wrong with you? Even as a mother-in-law, I can't stand watching you being so fierce to your husband. Mom, that's because you don't know, Qian Hui explained as she wiped away her tears. If you don't tell me, how would I know? What exactly happened to make my daughter so sad? Actually, before Chuanhao went to the US, he was Qianlan's boyfriend. Qianhui couldn't help but reveal the secret to her mother. After hearing this, Mother Qian looked at her in shock. What did you say? If you have the guts, say it again. Mom, did you know about this beforehand? Qianhui nodded her head. What's going on? Hurry and tell me. Mother Qian felt like she was about to have a heart attack. Why did her son-in-law suddenly have a relationship with Qianlan? Plus, from what Qianhui said, it didn't seem simple. Mom, I really regret marrying Su Chuanhao. Although he doesn't say it, I can tell that Qianlan has always been in his heart. In fact, we're living under the same roof. I'm afraid. Chapter 1200. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Mother Qian was so frightened by Qianhui's words that her blood pressure rose. I was wondering why Chunhao was so concerned about Qianlan. It turns out, that jerk actually bullied my two daughters. Mom. Qianhui threw herself into Mother Qian's arms. You have to stand up for me. When he comes back, see how I'll settle the score with him. Mother Qian hugged Qianhui with a furious expression. At this moment, Su Chuanhao drove over to Qianlan's school and asked around about Mo Zichen's class. After confirming that Mo Zichen was in his office preparing for class, he asked someone to call him over. Mo Zichen lifted his head and saw Su Chuanhao standing outside the office with a complicated expression on his face. He then stood up and walked over to Su Chuanhao. He then directly called out to him, I wonder what Mr. Su is looking for me for? Stop clinging to Qianlan. Su Chuanhao said to Mo Zichen. The two of you aren't a good match. Why don't you take a look at yourself and see how you're worthy of Qianlan? She is the mayor's daughter, not an ordinary female teacher. Do you think that you can use the Qian family to rise to the top? After listening to Su Chuanhao's undisguised evaluation, Mo Zichen smiled instead. If Mr. Su is here to talk about this, I think you should leave. Just tell me what you want. What will make you leave Qianlan? Is 1 million enough? Su Chuanhao pulled out a check from his pocket. As he wrote it, he asked, or do you think it's too little? In that case, I'll add another 1 million. Qianlan is the Qian family's treasure. She's not someone that someone like you can offend. If you don't leave, I'll call security. Mo Zichen couldn't be bothered to talk to this kind of person. He turned around and was about to return to his office when Su Chuanhao grabbed him and threw a punch at him. However, Mo Zichen grabbed her wrist. You will pay for your actions today. I'll be waiting for you. Mo Zichen shook off Su Chuanhao's wrist and answered coldly. Su Chuanhao was helpless against Mo Zichen, so he could only leave. But, a little while later, Qianlan heard about this and quickly found her way to Mo Zichen's classroom. But at that time, Mo Zichen was already in physics class and had no time to talk to her. Afterwards, Qianlan returned to her office. But, halfway there, Su Chuanhao blocked her way. Qianlan, seeing that everyone in the family was trying to interfere with her private matters, Qianlan let out a bitter laugh and asked, Why can't you just let me go? Qianlan, everyone's just concerned about you. Su Chuanhao continued to act like a gentleman. Su Chuanhao, please mind your own business. After speaking, Qianlan walked past Su Chuanhao and left. She didn't want everyone to care and loved her in the name of love, but it made her feel like she was locked in a secret net, unable to breathe at all. Qianlan knew that Su Chuanhao had gone to take care of Mo Zichen. In the past few days, the Qian family had caused an uproar in the school. Everyone knew that she was the mayor's second daughter and that she was with a poor boy. At this moment, she felt like she had completely lost her freedom. She even had to be careful when she breathed. Qianlan felt extremely uncomfortable. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt tired. It was one thing for the Qian family to do this, but why did they have to harass Mo Zichen? What right did they have to harass Mo Zichen? Before meeting her, Mo Zichen lived a normal life. Qianlan knew that he enjoyed this kind of peace, but the Qian family refused to let him have it. How much longer was she going to endure this? Soon, Su Chuanhao returned home from school. But the person waiting for him was a serious Mother Qian. Mom, Chuanhao, let me ask you, before you married Qian Hui, who else were you close with? As soon as Su Chuanhao heard Mother Qian's question, he immediately knew that Qian Hui had already exposed the truth. Mom, why are you suddenly asking about this? How dare you ask? You obviously knew that Qian Hui was Qian Lan's sister when you married her. Why didn't you tell us? You've been keeping this a secret. What's your motive? Don't tell me you want both of my daughters to be entangled with you? Mom, you've misunderstood. I told Qian Hui about this from the start. Plus, Qian Hui knows that I only treat Qian Lan like a sister, Su Chuanhao explained. Su Chuanhao explained. Look, all these years, I've always behaved myself and I've never done anything to Qian Lan. That was true. After hearing Su Chuanhao's explanation, Mother Qian's expression softened. But because of this relationship, you and Qian Hui should move out. That way, Qian Hui won't have any wild thoughts, Mother Qian said. Mom, Qian Lan and I have a clear conscience. Since you've explained everything, I don't want to pursue the matter any further. But you need to avoid arousing suspicion between you and Qian Lan. I'm already upset that she's entangled with that poor rascal, Mother Qian warned. At this time, Father Qian returned home from work. As soon as he walked in, he overheard Mother Qian talking about the poor rascal, so he quickly said, "Women are always short-sighted." "Old Qian, what do you mean by that?" Mother Qian immediately asked. "You still don't know? The poor rascal you're talking about is Mo Ting and Tongning's son," Father Qian humphed. That can't be possible, right? I've already asked someone to verify it. There's no mistake. When I think about how rich the Mo family and Tang family are, Qian Lan certainly has good taste, Father Qian praised. If that's the case, does that mean the rascal is also from a prestigious family? If Qian Lan marries him, with this relationship, we will have a stronger support in Beijing. You could say that, Father Qian replied. Previously, the Qian family looked down on Mo Zichen. But after finding out that he was Mo Ting's son, their attitude immediately changed. Qian Lan hid behind the screen and listened to her parents' plans. Father Qian had said that he was doing this for the sake of her happiness. But in the end, it was all because of the Mo family's influence in Beijing. With this thought, Qian Lan revealed a look of despair. Perhaps, being together with Mo Zichen would only harm him. Sometimes, people couldn't escape their fate. Perhaps she should accept reality. With this thought, Qian Lan gave Mo Zichen a phone call and arranged to meet outside. Mo Zichen thought she was being bullied again, so he immediately rushed over to the meeting place. But as soon as they met, Qian Lan said to him, "Zichen, I think it's best that we forget about what happened between us. How long has it been? I've already caused you so much trouble. If a relationship needs to be burdened by a family, both of us will be tired. I don't want my family to use you. You deserve better." Qian Lan? Mo Zichen wanted to cut her off. "I'm sorry." Qian Lan held back her tears and apologized in seriousness. "Unless I can get rid of my family, I won't be able to place the pressure of my entire family on your shoulders." Chapter 12:01. Do you really have to do this? Mo Zichen's heart ached. "I don't want to see my family suck your blood," Qian Lan said firmly. Qian Lan said firmly as she stretched out her right hand. "I will free myself from my family. Give me your blessings." Mo Zichen took a deep breath and nodded his head as he held out Qian Lan's hand. "From now on, if you run into any difficulties, feel free to look for me. I don't want to cause you any trouble." After speaking, Qian Lan quickly turned around and walked away from Mo Zichen. She was afraid that she would regret her decision. She knew that Mo Zichen was a good person, But the problem was that she hadn't truly seen her family clearly. After leaving Immerse, Qianlan knelt on the ground and cried. But she also reminded herself that from today onwards, she was going to do her best to reject her family and learn to make them respect her life. Otherwise, she would never fall in love. After returning to the Qian family home, Mother Qian immediately ran over and asked, "Didn't you say you were going to Hyatt Regency for dinner? Why didn't you go? Where's the rascal?" "I'm not going today and I won't ever go again," Qianlan replied in seriousness. "Because you and the rest of you make me feel disgusted." "Qianlan, how could you say that? Our family is doing this for your own good." "Don't keep saying that," Qianlan said firmly. "By the way, I've broken up with Immerse. As you wished, I'm not going to look for him anymore." "Qianlan, if there's nothing else, I'm going back to my room." After speaking, Qianlan brushed past her family and stubbornly returned to her own room. Mother Qian and the others were left standing at the door, sighing, "This child has no idea that we are doing this for her sake. She doesn't know what's good for her." Qianlan sneered as she listened to these words. Afterwards, she made up her mind to leave. The next morning, Qianlan went to the university to resign. But, just as she was leaving with some documents, she spotted Immerse walking past her with a textbook in his hand. At that moment, Immerse acted like he didn't know Qianlan as he walked past her expressionlessly. Since he was going to break up, he was going to do it cleanly. There was no need to pretend to be in pain and make things difficult for the other party. Qianlan was heartbroken, but she also became stronger. To escape from her parents' control, Qianlan signed up for the army without them knowing. By the time Mother Qian found out, Qianlan had already passed her physical examination. Mother Qian was surprised. She never expected Qianlan to be so unreasonable. But, in order to enlist, Qianlan even cut her hair short without discussing it with her family. Before the training began, Qianlan was packing her luggage at home. As Qianlan and Qianhui approached her room, Qianlan said, "Qianlan, why don't I ask your father to pull some strings and get you off the list?" "You don't have to go. If you tell my father to do this, I'm going to report him," Qianlan said firmly. "Joining the army is my personal choice. You have no right to question me. Why would a girl want to be a soldier?" "Because I don't want to see you," Qianlan sneered. "Apart from joining the army, I have no other choice." "Qianlan." Mother Qian was anxious. "Your mother is doing this for your own good. We've already talked about this 1,000 times. There's no point talking about it anymore," Qianlan said as she closed her suitcase. After speaking, Qianlan closed her suitcase. "Mom, I wish you good health. Sis, I wish you a speedy pregnancy." Mother Qian was angry, but there was nothing she could do. Qianlan had become even more stubborn and there was nothing she could do. After carrying her suitcase, Qianlan left the Qian family home. But as she got downstairs, she ran into Su Chuanhao. Qianlan did not say a word as she turned to leave. But Su Chuanhao suddenly asked, "Don't you want your family anymore?" "I'll send you off." Qianlan waved goodbye to Su Chuanhao and left the Qian family home without looking back. How badly was she hurt for her to be so determined? No one knew how she felt and no one knew how much she suffered. All she wanted was to control her own fate. Was that so difficult? No matter how difficult the Qian family was, she was willing to fight them to the end. After all, a person couldn't live their life under someone else's control. This was the only thing that Qianlan wanted. Therefore, she threw herself into the closed recruit training camp without hesitation. She felt that she needed an even stronger will and a firm belief. That night, while on a mission, one of Immerse's friends asked, "Did you know that the woman you were dating went to the military?" Immerse nodded his head. "I've heard about it." "Amazing. I've never seen such a strong-willed heiress." In order to break free from her family's control, she went to the toughest place in the world. "I'm impressed." Immerse laughed. "As for Brother Qi, you're too pitiful. Didn't you only date for a little too short? Even something so dangerous couldn't keep your mouth shut?" Immerse sneered. "But I can understand why you fell for her. Don't you have a childhood friend by your side? It's been so many years, yet you've never fallen for her." Qianlan only looks weak on the surface. She's actually very strong-willed, Immerse sighed. Forget it. No matter how strong-willed she is, she's no longer yours. In our line of work, how can we find the right to date? Immerse did not say a word. To be exact, time would make them the best people they could be. A little while later, Tongning called Immerse home to attend Hai Rue's anniversary celebration. In reality, she simply wanted to see her son, so she found an excuse. After all, it was safer to keep a low profile. So, before the anniversary celebration started, he returned to Hyatt Regency. At that time, Tongning's friends were all at home. "Zichen, you're home." Immerse approached the elders and greeted them sweetly. "Auntie Long, Auntie Lin, Mommies. Why did you suddenly come home?" Tongning immediately grabbed onto his hand. "I'm free today," Immerse replied. "You guys chat first. I'm going to go get changed." "Hurry up then," Tongning urged. Afterwards, the aunties began to discuss amongst themselves. "Don't you feel bad that Zichen is teaching away from home?" Longjie asked. "I think he's gotten skinnier." "It's one thing to feel bad, but his life is his own. He has the right to make his own decisions," Tongning replied. Who would have thought that the almighty Mo Ting and Tongning's beloved son would end up teaching at a school? No one would believe it. As long as he's happy. Immerse leaned against the wall as he listened to Tongning defend him and speak up for him. In this world, there was probably no one that understood Immerse better than Tongning. Immerse suddenly felt both relieved and sad. He didn't want to see his mother grow old, even though Tongning looked no different from a 30-year-old. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.